And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention, roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. It's Monday morning in the world of policing and politics. We got a lot going on. The country's upside down right now with this George Floyd 2.0. You know, I often said that the Democrats were often seeking their next George Floyd, and they found it in a white woman. And it appears both sides, left and right, have found their George Floyd. It seems politics is starting to meet somewhere in the middle, and there's an agenda behind it. So, who is really destroying law enforcement? We spoke about this last week. Is it the politicians, or is it actually the fake cowardly leadership within? I call them imposters. Some of these chiefs throughout the country in blue cities are imposters wearing that chief uniform, and they're eating their police departments within. Cowards. So that's the point we've gotten to. John, let's jump into it. Marlon, good morning. Let's rock.
Yeah, so I think it's been exposed for a while, but I don't know how exposed to the public it's been. But what's been exposed is really all the frauds in law enforcement. And unfortunately, what we're finding out is all of the frauds sit at the top of all of these major police department and law enforcement agencies. You know, so this ICE shooting really revealed that to the public, I believe, because you're seeing everybody come out of the woodworks and throw their credibility on the line and really prove that their expert analysis isn't really that at all. And they really don't even know what they're talking about. And not only don't they know the law, they have horrible takes on tactics. And then on top of that, all of their takes appear to be completely politicized. So, you know, we've spoken on it before. We've touched on it before, how like politics controls law enforcement. And I don't think the public understands that at all. I don't think the overwhelming majority of cops understand that. They believe that their police departments and their police chiefs act separately from the mayors, from their city council, and the agenda of their overall state and city. And that's just completely wrong. If you think that, you're not paying attention. You haven't been paying attention these last 15 years. You know, before we get into it and we really start to dig in on a lot of prominent names in law enforcement, I am going to give them a little leeway, though, because I think we're at a precipice in law enforcement right now. I don't think this is anything that police chiefs have dealt with in the past prior. We've interviewed a lot of guys generations before us. Randy Jurgensen, we've interviewed, famed detective who wrote The Circle of Six, the lead detective in the case, in the famed case at the Harlem Mosque, right? And I think he's almost close to 90 years old at this point, right? So he was on the job before we were even swimming, right? Like we've had him on. We've had Ralph Friedman on. Ralph Friedman, another guy, right, was out there on the streets ripping guns, getting into shootings before we were even a thought in our parents' brains. And, you know, speaking to them and speaking to many other people, they both, I asked them both the same questions. Like how was the political rhetoric of the time, and did it matter? Like, did the Democrats or Republicans support you more? What was the align? New York's always been a mainly Democratic state and city, but how was your job overall? And Ralph said, you know, I think Ralph summed it up beautifully, where he said, like, he's like, look, it didn't matter if you were Republican or Democrat. They all agreed. If you lift your hand to a cop, if you broke the law, you go to jail. No one looked into this use of force. No one weighed in on police incidents. Nobody got involved in any of this. Democrat, Republican, it didn't matter. When it came to public safety, there was unity from both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But today, the last 10, 15 years, we've seen this division, and a scary division, and it's getting scarier and scarier by the day. And so now, you know, these people that are in these high positions, at one time, it was a different job. Same's true for us, though. One time, it was a different job when you were a cop, when you were a sergeant, when you were a lieutenant. And now we're in this new time that really we've never been in this country before, where we have mayors going out here on TV and actually trying to pit local law enforcement against federal law enforcement. We're on the precipice of really, really bad, unprecedented times, and we're in unprecedented times. So I'm going to say, while it doesn't excuse them for not having a spine and a pair of balls, we have to understand that all of this hasn't been well thought out. This hasn't been looked at. And I'm going to give that same leeway to the unions as well, too. This is not your daddy's policing. This is not your daddy's America. This is not your daddy's law enforcement. So we're going to get into all of what we've seen on the news lately. We're going to talk about Minneapolis Chief Brian O'Hara. We're going to talk about Philadelphia Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. We're going to talk about Portland Police Chief Bobby Day. We're going to bring in their mayors. We're going to talk about a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Marlon, what's up, brother?
Yeah, morning, guys. Morning, chat. Hope everyone had a great weekend. We have a lot to talk about today. I'm not even sure we're gonna get to all of it because there's just so much going on with these Chiefs, you know. But I'm gonna say these people are enabled by the politicians behind them, you know. I think years ago you would have never seen people like this in those positions because a lot of them, when you hear them talk, you realize there's you wonder how much activity is going on upstairs, you know. But I don't think it's a coincidence that much of we started going downhill on this like 15 years ago. You know, prior to 15 years ago, you wouldn't have seen so much. I don't think it was as apparent as it is now with the amount of politicization of law enforcement, and I don't think that's a coincidence. You know, without trying to get into the weeds, I think you have to look at America overall and see what's been happening for the last 15 years in order to understand what's going on with police departments. But I think luckily enough for us, I actually believe we might be at the blow off top of like wokeism and the politicization of the police department. I think just before this ends, you're gonna see them scream to the top of their lungs, and you'll see all the woke spoiled brats who are protesting now. They're gonna have to scream to the top of their lungs and get it all out because you know what's coming around the corner is things are gonna look kind of different, and I don't think that stuff is gonna be as a parent anymore or enabled by mayors anymore. But got a lot to talk about on this, so I'm ready to go.
So I think it's interesting. We're talking about the last 15 years. So I think it's interesting if we see the cultural shift. If we look back, right, the post 9/11 era, like immediately after 9/11, I think that law enforcement on a whole, not just in New York City, but for the entire country, where cops became unquestionable protectors. People weren't questioning cops at that time. They became protectors that people were proud of. And we saw a short glimpse of support for policing, especially with a focus on the NYPD in this country. And I think that we saw a major cultural shift where cops started to feel the morale and started to feel the temperament of policing throughout this country change when Obama took office. So say the last 15 years, in my opinion, if we see how history has played out, if we look back, I think it's when Obama took office where things really started to change completely. And I think cops felt it even before legislation had hit the policing profession throughout the country. So when Obama came into office, Obama put this lens on policing where the topic of racial bias and systematic bias within the profession was really pinpointed and focused on it. And we saw things started to change within policing. That's where legislation started to change because policing was always on the local level. It's with the municipalities, even when it came to legislation. And Obama started to have these federal training mandates within different police departments throughout the country. And we even saw it with the NYPD, right? We saw federal oversight. And that's where things really started to change. And we saw the infection of politics into policing. I think back on an incident with Obama when Obama's friend, who was a professor, had an apartment in Springfield, Massachusetts, where a sergeant actually placed him under arrest, or at least detained him, because he had climbed into the window or took another route to get into his apartment because he didn't have his keys. And the sergeant in Springfield at the time made the arrest. The assumption was Tom Joyce put it here, Professor Gates. Absolutely right. Thank you. So at the time, based on the information the sergeant had, it was apparent, or appeared to be, that the professor was committing a burglary, right? Turns out that wasn't the case. But it was good policing, and turns out that the professor was gaining access to his own apartment. That's why everyone is innocent till proven guilty. But somehow Obama put this focus on it, and it became about a racial issue. So deep into publicizing and these subliminal messages about race, Obama sat and had a beer.
Oh, did we just lose Eric?
Seems like it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, Eric's off. Okay. All righty. So his Starlink's acting up again. All right. So, all right. So what he's talking about is the inflection of all of these politicians and politics really coming off over on policing, right? Like, we've never seen that before, where a president, politicians, or anybody became expert police analysis. Eric, your Starlink's going. Now he's off again. Yeah. So all right. So what he's talking about is the how politics really came over. So this is Dr. Cornel West, right? We expect this from elites. We've had this rhetoric from elites, from academia, but never came to national attention, where everyone became police analysts. Steve Kerr on the NBA teams, NBA coaches, NBA players. Prior to that, law enforcement was given the benefit of the doubt almost all the time, right? Same way that the founding of this nation, right? You're innocent until proven guilty, right? You're innocent until proven guilty. And the same thing, law enforcement was like, okay, you have a tough job. We understand that. We're not going to weigh in. We don't understand the laws. We don't understand the tactics. We don't understand why the officer did what they did. But this doesn't look good at this moment of time. Absent the Rodney King incident, absent some brutal incidents like that, the media, politicians stayed completely out of the topic of policing. 2008 was the first time where we saw a president, the media, ton of politicians, and now all of these celebrities weigh in and become expert police analysts. So I believe that's what you were getting on, right, Eric?
Yeah, I think what's important is how they projected themselves as police analysts, but how they injected racial bias into policing. And they did it just by talking about a beer. And I thought it was absolutely disgusting. They were actually saying, well, the professor was going to have red stripe because that was kind of the culture from the Caribbean islands. And then they were talking about how the sergeant was having, I think it was Sam Adams, Boston Lager at the time, and how that was like roots of white. And they didn't say white supremacy, but there was some type of like derogatory the way that they viewed it. And it became this thing of white versus black, even the beer that they chose. So these things were just small amounts of injection over time. Like this is a slow burn. This didn't just happen overnight. So, by the way, sorry I froze here. I just switched my internet to something else, but the weather's been kind of rough lately. But I think that they slowly injected this racial bias and systemic bias of policing, and it was really intelligent, this agenda. This took years. It didn't happen overnight. But I think that, to me, was the first pinnacle moment that changed that cultural shift from the post 9/11 era of the way people viewed cops into how they view it now. And in my opinion, that was the key point where it changed the entire country.
So, I expect, academians and professors like Professor Gates or Dr. Cornell West, I expect them to have some pretty bad takes, right? They don't really know. They live in this safe environment. They're analyzing from the outside. They've never really dealt with this type of behavior, or they don't really truly have an understanding of the law, but they speak from a position of authority. So here's Dr. Cornell West on the shooting of Renee Good, right? And whatever. I don't really care that he has this take. The take is a problem when now it comes from a politician or it comes from actual police chief. So listen to what Dr. Cornell West has to say.
Let us be clear. Let us not be deceived. The murder of Sister Renee Good in Princess City, Minneapolis, is not just about one isolated incident. It is one step closer to American-style fascism, not just in terms of the rule of big money and big military, not just in terms of the grotesque wealth inequality, not just in terms of the scapegoating of brown immigrants, of black folk, of gays and lesbians, and the crushing of the working class and its trade unions. It's deeper than that. It's a spiritual issue that has to do with those who think that might makes right, that power can always trump any morality, and think that somehow everyday people, organized people, will cave in and give up and feel as if we're so hopeless and so helpless and so impotent. But no, I come from a great black freedom tradition that understands that no matter how much you gangsterize the world, we have a countervailing force inside of us, outside of us, among us. So yes, we respond with love of people in face of hatred of those people. Yes, we respond in terms of justice in the face of terror, and freedom in the face of unbelievable trauma. Yes, indeed. This is a moment in which more and more we're going to have to decide, are we willing to bear witness, to pay a cost, and to be true to those who came before in the face of this organized greed, this weaponized hatred, and this routinized cruelty in policy?
So, I mean, that's whatever, right? Who cares what he's got to say? He's a professor. But what happens now, and what's been happening now, is now we have figures in law enforcement, and we're going to go through them in a second, and they're literally mirroring what this guy's saying. They're saying that the shooting was a murder. They're saying that the policy of going out and enforcing our immigration law is fascism, and we have a big problem. And now they're talking about ICE as if they're the bad guys. We have DAs in Philly. We have a DA Larry Krasner in Philadelphia. He's sitting there and he's telling you that ICE are bad guys, and he's threatening them. He's threatening, I'm going to lock you up. But he doesn't do the same when it comes to violent repeat offenders who are out on the streets of Philadelphia causing havoc and chaos. So we're again, like I said earlier, we're at a precipice here.
Yeah, we are. We are. These people are all like activists and operatives. I mean, you have a problem with ICE, but you have a problem with ICE. You want to call them fascists. Okay. When are you going to talk about Palantir and the larger, look at the larger scope of things of what's happening in this country? They don't. They always go for the low hanging fruit and never touch on the real issues that are the real issues of like, say, fascism, and all these people are doing right now is riling up the protesters and giving them a cause to go out there and feel they have the right to go and block ICE. They're not really doing anything, and that's why I say these people are operatives, because whenever the Democrat Party needs a topic, needs a platform, a political platform, which they do because we're in the midterms this year. Okay, these people come out the woodwork and use police incidents as as a means to motivate their base to go out there and vote. Okay, that's all it is. These people like him don't actually care about real fascism. Otherwise, he'd be talking about digital ID and Palantir and all these things that we brought up. But they'll never touch on it. Never touch on it, because if you look deep enough, you'll see the money from these same big companies, the money that's actually creating fascism in America is paying some of these people too. And that's why they'll never talk about their masters. They'll always go for the low hanging fruit that these wackos on the street need to motivate them to go out there.
Well, it's interesting, right? We refer to them as activists, but in fact, I believe they're all actors, right? And just as Marlon said, they're operatives. I believe they're actors,
Yeah.
and they're all putting on a performance here. This is Hollywood in front of your faces, and when we get projected controversial incidents like we have right now, and they're not really controversial, right? This is an incident that is controversial because it's been manufactured by these so-called activists because they have an agenda to get emotional, to have people emotionally invested and have them emotionally driven by this incident. And look what he's talking about. The doctor here is talking about racial bias. How does this incident with Renee Good have any comparison to racial bias? How? But somehow they've done a great job of interjecting this and injecting this in people's minds. And it just shows that a good majority of people probably have no idea that Renee Good is actually a white woman. They probably don't know that she's a mother. They probably don't know she's a wife. They probably don't even know the incident. I would say that most of the people probably never saw the video themselves. They probably have no idea, but they're being driven and they're like a flock of sheep. And they listen to these operatives, as Marlon would say, and I say paid actors. And they're emotionally driven because, and then also a good portion of them who get involved in these protests, these participants are paid. So they have their own agenda. And I don't think they even know what the incident is. I think if they were told that Renee Good is a black woman, they'd be out there cheering and they would be out there protesting about how the police are killing black women. So they have no idea what's going on. And we see when we have incidents just like this, not only are these people actors, but we have actors getting involved, right? Hollywood gets involved in this. We're talking about the NBA basketball coaches. Somehow the whole country starts to weigh in on this. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but if I believe what may happen, I believe this may foreshadow some similarities to the arrest and conviction of Derek Chauvin. So I fear for some of these ICE agents right now, especially the one that fired the shots, that there could be some political pressure to have this ICE agent arrested and ultimately convicted, because that's the ultimate goal, to put pressure on this agenda, right? And I say it often, policing is the most tangible form of government in this country. And how do you actually change legislation? You think it would be by the leadership of these police departments, but you don't have to, because these imposters of chiefs throughout this country, and you're looking at one right now, not because she's a female, but she's a complete imposter, have eaten their police departments within. And exactly what John said early on in this episode, they're not in opposition with their mayors. They don't necessarily just work for them, but they move in lockstep with the mayors. And since this conversation, I have projected to you about Obama infecting and injecting politics, these chiefs have taken a stance on a national level is to back the politicians, the mayors. And I know, John, you had said that they're stupid and they don't know what they're doing. I think they do know what they're doing. I think they're making a conscious decision to go against the common sense realities of policing. And they go against it because it's about self-image, self-promotion, and they move in lockstep with their mayors. Because if they didn't, they would not get to the point that they are. And so there's no doubt about it that I think they're straight up evil. You know, they project these fake crocodile tears. They know exactly what is necessary for their police departments, and they know that their rhetoric is not only the demise of policing, but it will affect cops individually that get involved in incidents like this that can not only affect them on civil liability, but could take their own freedom. Now, do I think that ICE should be out doing local law enforcement style policing in the streets? Absolutely not. Again, I think they have training. I know I spoke to several people, and several people agree and they don't agree, and said, well, that these federal agents have some training that's very similar to NYPD in big cities. Now, I understand that, but there is a difference. And I believe that all skills are perishable. You can train and train and train, but unless those skills are ever applied, those skills are perishable. So you have to be pressure tested. Cops in New York City, Chicago, LA, Miami, big cities, they have training, but they're also pressure tested. So they constantly engage with people and they deal with chaotic, unplanned, unexpected events. That is the nature of policing. And in my opinion, federal agents are doing surveillance and investigations, and normally, there's always exceptions, are dealing with your planned events. And they're not pressure tested like local law enforcement is on a daily basis. Now, I hope that I'm wrong, but I hope that this ICE agent doesn't eventually get arrested and prosecuted. But what we see right now is the same playbook that we saw with George Floyd 2.0. If you close your eyes, and many people who have no idea what's happening, they would probably envision that this is another black man who lost their life, just like George Floyd. But what they don't tell you is that this woman, while it may be tragic, her actions were contributing factors to her own demise. Now, is it sad? Is it tragic? Absolutely. But why is the onus always on law enforcement to make sure that they do not only protect everyone else, but to make sure that even though someone as an adult is committing actions that could lead to their own demise, we blame the police. We expect the police to do everything above and beyond and to be superheroes, but yet we don't want to treat them and give them the respect of superheroes. But when it comes crunch time, police are treated as if they should be superheroes. So these chiefs, while I do believe that most of them are just complete idiots, stuck around long enough to get promoted within their own police departments, I believe that they're making a conscious decision and they know exactly what they're doing by this pandering and eating their own police departments within.
So there's a lot there. One, I don't think that the ICE agent is going to get charged. I don't think a federal officer is going to get charged in the state. I know Minnesota, Minneapolis, they want to charge him. I don't know how that's going to happen if the federal government does not allow it, because he's under their jurisdiction. So I don't believe he will be charged. If he was a police officer, he'd already have no bail and he would already been arrested. So he'd already be turning himself in. So that's something I think that if you're in local law enforcement, you're in municipal law enforcement, that's something you really need to think about. Like, this is the level of scrutiny you're under. The other thing I just want to go back to, I never said they were stupid and they don't know what they're doing. What I said is we're at a precipice. We're at a time in history that has never been faced before. We're at a time in history where politicians are attempting to pit municipal law enforcement against federal law enforcement. Now, for us, we're sitting here and like, all right, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I would do. I would not go along with this. I'd resign. Right? But it's easier said than done. There's not that blueprint there. This is the first time people have been put on the plank and said, you're going to do this and you're going to say this or your career's over. And let me just go back. It's not the first time. It's the first time that this issue has came up where the difference between municipal law enforcement and federal law enforcement. So they're actually being put on a plank and saying, you're going to do this or your career's over. And they're choosing to do this. Now, we've seen this in COVID where people forgot that they had a spine, forgot the laws of this country, forgot that they supposedly cared about the men and women in their police departments, and really crushed their own department. We saw this during George Floyd. We saw chiefs really take their own souls and hand them over to a violent mob. They got on a knee, disgracefully, disgustingly, and they still sit up there as if they're proud men and proud members of law enforcement and leaders. And they go out and they talk about leadership, and they go out and they talk about all this stuff when we've watched them cave over and over again. So what this new chief did, this Brian O'Hara or Bob Day, when they're coming out, they have already seen the blueprint. The blueprint is you're going to take a knee. The blueprint is you're going to keep your mouth shut. And so now this is almost an internal civil war in law enforcement, and they're posing this insane rhetoric that ICE agents are somehow criminals. So what's different about the girl that we're going to play right now, Philly Sheriff, what's different about her that I want people to understand is she's not subservient to a mayor. She's not appointed by a mayor. She was elected by the people of Philadelphia. Her officers do court removals, they do court protection, they do a lot of civil enforcement. They're not really police officers. She herself was a Philadelphia police officer. So I just want everybody to understand that the next two chiefs we talk about are completely different because they are subservient to their mayors. She is not. However, her rhetoric should never come out of anyone in law enforcement's mouth. Again, our job is to preserve the peace. Our job is to keep the peace. Our job is to protect and preserve life. Our job is to uphold the United States Constitution and to fight and defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. What she's doing here, she's turning up the flames, and she's actually making the situation worse for every member of law enforcement. Now, if that situation was horrible and that officer executed a woman on her knees, begging for her life for absolutely no reason, I still don't think she should talk like this. I still don't think she should come up here and talk like this. She should say that this person should be handled in court. She doesn't agree with anything that happened, and she has faith in the criminal justice system. But instead, she chose to go out and do this and not only endanger the community she serves, but endanger all of her partners in law enforcement, including her federal partners in law enforcement. Listen to what this police sheriff has to say.
Good afternoon. I'm Rochelle Bilal, the sheriff for the city and county of Philadelphia. And I say her name, Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. This should not have happened, but we're here today. Let know that law enforcement professionals, real ones, not the fake made up ICE, probably Trump's new army to attack citizens of the United States. Did you hear what I said? No law enforcement professional wears a mask. None. None. Those that come into our communities wearing a mask to commit crime, thank God for our district attorney, Larry Krasner, who said he's going to lock them up. And I'm saying now, we are not going to whisk you away for them to hide your identity, because when you do it there, you're getting arrested there. No whisk away for them to hide you. None of that here. None of that here. Law enforcement professionals do not shoot at moving vehicles. I'm not saying fleeing, because she wasn't fleeing. She was getting out of the way. Law enforcement professionals do not stand in front of moving vehicles invoking an action that is illegal. No, we don't. And so we stand here today with all those who stand against the made-up, fake, what you can call ICE, professional law enforcement. I don't call them none of that. I call them made-up, fake, wannabe law enforcement. Because what they do is against not only legal law, but the moral law. So I'm with the DA, and we will work with them. If any of them want to come in this city and commit a crime, you will not be able to hide. Nobody will whisk you off. You don't want this smoke, because we will bring it to you. And the fake, whatever they call them, because I can't say the name, but the criminal in the White House would not be able to keep you from going to jail. Renee Good should be here today. And to her family, we are saying law enforcement professionals are not the ones here in this city that would do that. But here's the last thing that I will say. Law enforcement professionals around the country do their job. And we have been fighting for years to build that bridge between us and our communities. You have one negative nutcase that causes this problem, and now we all have to fight again to let people know law enforcement works with communities. These crimes would not be down if we didn't have communities work with us.
So she comes out and she says that ICE are criminals. She says that Renee wasn't attempting to flee. Says she didn't hit the officer. She was just moving out of the way with her car. Just so you guys know, what she did for the better part of her career in the Philadelphia Police Department was recruit training. So this is the problem when people aren't out there, don't do police work, and just get the attendance award for staying around the longest and really never had to partake in the core mission of policing, never had to work those foot posts, never had to work those sector cars, never had to make arrests, never had to deal with DAs, never had to deal with violent criminals, never had to deal with even basic community complaints, never had to deal with domestic calls, never had to do any of this. This woman is a 40-year law enforcement, I'm going to put in quotations, professional, because I'm just going to say, again, she just won the attendance award for showing up every day, because I don't know what the hell she was doing when she was at work every day. But now she's an elected sheriff, and she clearly has no idea what she's talking about whatsoever. She cannot analyze a stop. She cannot analyze a shooting. She hasn't invoked the law. She hasn't told you any law. She doesn't understand Graham versus Connor. She doesn't understand basic self-defense. She doesn't understand it. And this is what now we're dealing with. This is a prime example of who is leading our police departments. And I don't care, woman, black, white, man, they're all the same in my opinion. They're all exactly the same. One might be a little bit more professional. One might be a little bit more articulate. One might appear a little bit better on camera. They're all the same. Her coming out, this is who the majority of people who are leading law enforcement and people who are out on the media today as law enforcement experts, this is what they're saying. This is the garbage that they're feeding you.
Yeah, absolutely. These, her career in a lot of ways, and when I look at her career, I think of Eric Adams. I mean, she, again, like Adams, she was very, let's say, politically active while on the job, and I'm pretty sure if you were to look at her central folder or her police record, you're probably not going to find too many collars under her name, And again, this is the danger of putting these people in charge of police departments now. But I don't think any of that is coincidental, Again, I've already told you guys my conspiracy theory on it, that, you get these dumb people in charge and they're going to rely on more tech and more computers and more AI, and they have no respect for the actual, meat and potatoes of basic policing, because they were never real cops themselves. But John said that what's happening is unprecedented, and I think it's unprecedented in many levels. In a lot of ways, we have like he said, like we have government, we have like infighting between government, and I mean, you look at what happened last night. Basically, Trump just said we're dropping a case on the head of the Federal Reserve. So that unprecedentedness is like we're in like a whole new territory when it comes to all of these things. And I think personally that if you're in a city that has if you're in a Democrat city right now, especially if you're in a Democrat city facing fiscal problems like Philadelphia is, Philadelphia is facing structural deficits right now, and they're running out of the pandemic era funds that kind of plugged a lot of holes. If you're in one of these cities, I mean, you got to be paying attention to a lot of this right now, because I think the mayor is making phone calls to your sheriff or your commissioner, and he's going to ask them to toe the line. Because if you look at all these cities that these guys are chiefs of or sheriffs of, or they're attached to, because this lady really has no, she's not going to have to face the consequences of her rhetoric because of the actual role that the sheriff's department plays in Philly. But nevertheless, if you're working in one of these cities, your police commissioner is more than likely getting a phone call from the mayor, and who's probably a Democrat, and he's going to have to toe the line. And none of this is coincidence again. And I think we maybe have a good 5-6 months before things cool down, because again, we're also in a midterm year, and the Democrats need a platform, and they need to keep their young, motivated, and in a lot of cases angry base. They need to keep them occupied, and they need to manipulate that energy towards something. And it's always cops. Cops are the low-hanging fruit for them. And it's an easy target, and it's an easy means of them diverting their energy away from the political, the elite, the political class of their cities who've, let things come to where they are. So,
well, friends and listeners, thank you so much for being here. As always, Terry Manine, 425, always helping us out by saying, let's hit the like button. So please like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate it. 41 minutes into it. No other platform are you going to hear this assessment of this controversial incident that's going on throughout the entire country. Why? Because there's no narrative here and there's no spin. So thank you, everyone that's here with us. Like, share, subscribe. Let's continue to grow. With that being said, there's no doubt about it that in these democratic cities that they're moving in lockstep, right? It's become not just cities, particularly with a specific agenda. They're moving in lockstep on a national level, right? It's not federalized yet, but they're moving in lockstep. And I agree with Marlon's assessment. And that's why I've often say that the Democrats are always seeking their next George Floyd. And I don't believe it's coincidence. It's the timing. When the Democrats need to move the needle, they find their George Floyd. And ironically, they found their George Floyd in a white woman, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about the appearance. It matters about the movement. And why? Why do they need a police incident? Again, I'll say it again. Because the policing profession is the most tangible form of government to move the needle. So if we find a George Floyd incident or a George Floyd lookalike incident itself, the Democrats can move the needle by getting into the hearts and minds of weak-minded people or people with an agenda, people that want to get paid. And the Democrats do this because policing is the most tangible form of government. So if you attack the police, instead of attacking from the top down, you attack the police with their boots on the ground from bottom up. You change the entire system, and it's completely intentional. So what's the common denominator in this? If you look at the common denominator, we're talking about Philadelphia, we're talking about Baltimore, instances like cities like Chicago and even New York City. And what's the common denominator? In these democratic cities, we have these weak chiefs, which I call them imposters. That woman right there is a complete imposter. She has no idea what policing is. She has no idea about the policing apparatus. She's just worn a uniform her entire career, but she never actually performed police work. She was basically a cardboard cutout. And so with that being said, the common denominator is these cities are all extreme failures. Extreme failures that they're telling you, and they're giving you this narrative of what happened and why it's affecting the city. No, your weak chiefs and your politicians, these mayors of these cities, have created this environment that is just a disaster. It's a disaster. Who wants to live in Baltimore right now? Who wants to live in Philadelphia or the South Side of Chicago or some, deep-rooted, rough parts of New York City because of mayors like this and weak chiefs? This is absolutely, absolutely insane. And for her to push a narrative is even more irresponsible and inflammatory. She should say, let the investigation play out. That's what we do. We do a full investigation. But instead, she told you somehow without investigation, she got into the mind of Renee Good and told you that Renee Good was just trying to get away. Really? So how about the ICE agent? he wasn't trying to get away. It was okay that she struck him with a vehicle. She was trying to get away, but the ICE agent wasn't trying to get away. So they put spins and put narratives, and they get into weak-minded people. And weak-minded people that have no idea what happened, they didn't watch the video, are listening to imposters like this and getting fed pure bullshit. And they're eating it and they're sucking it up because they have no idea what's going on. And they're playing on the minds of weak-minded people. And then exactly what Marlon said. There's a civil war going on in this country right now, figuratively speaking, through words, right? Attacking that man in the White House, who are putting our federal government and our local governments completely at odds. And they're not supposed to be opposites. They're supposed to coexist. But with these politicians, they're putting them completely at odds. And how do they do it? With the most tangible form of government, with federal police and local police. And that's how they're doing it. Not from the top down, from the bottom up.
Yeah, so the Philadelphia Police Department, the chief of Philadelphia Police, by the way, who's not so much better, he put out a statement that he's not speaking for law enforcement, that she doesn't speak for law enforcement, she doesn't speak for Philadelphia police, but she still went and doubled down. She goes on CNN and she doubles down. And now she gives, I just clipped out a portion of this. This is her assessment of the video now. Now it's a more professional setting. She doesn't have Larry Krasner behind her. Larry Krasner, the DA of Philadelphia, he put out a meme, FAFO, fuck around and find out. And in that meme, and what he wrote on top of that meme was that basically if ICE agents or the National Guard break the law, he'll prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Now, again, I've never seen Larry Krasner do that for violent repeat offenders in his own district. So that shows you who Larry Krasner is. So now she's up on CNN, right? And they got a narrative to push, like all mainstream media. I don't care if it's CNN, I don't care if it's Fox, I don't care who it is. I don't trust any of these media networks anymore. I really don't. Listen to what she's got to say. Listen to what she's got to say here.
We now have a new angle tonight, filmed by the actual ICE agent who shot Good himself, right? He filmed their interaction and has released it. Vice President Vance says it shows that the ICE agent, that his life was endangered and he fired in self-defense. You do see them interacting, and it seems to be a rather calm interaction, her arms out the window, then it escalates within milliseconds to the shooting. You know, looking at this as law enforcement, okay, and what he did and what happened, what do you see?
First of all, law enforcement professional does not put themselves in the place of danger. You don't stand in front of a vehicle, basically standing there so that you can get hit or cause an accident. And then when the woman, and Miss Good, turns to get away from them, and the officer is on the side, where is the threat? There's no more threat for you to shoot twice into a car. There was no gun shooting at you. The car turned you out of the way. That should have been it. 2 more shots into the vehicle, killing this woman. It's wrong.
Sheriff Bilal, I appreciate your time tonight, and thank you so much.
You don't want this smoke? Because we will bring it.
So that's her there giving her analysis. Now, look, I'm going to be the first to say, I got the when I first watched the cell phone video, it confirmed everything we said prior. We did an episode breaking down that video. Go back and watch that prior to having that ICE agent cell phone video, where we basically said his tactics were horrendous, but bad tactics doesn't equal bad shoot. We still believe that the shooting was consistent with law. So, but after his cell phone video came out, I think his tactics were even worse than horrendous. I mean, what the hell are you doing going out of the car with your cell phone out filming? And people that don't know any better, that also believe themselves to be police experts, are like, well, he didn't have a body camera, so he has to film. Well, no, if you don't have a body camera, you don't have to film anything. If you're worried about it, request a body camera, right? And that's it. Like if you want the body camera to keep you safe, request a body camera. If your agency doesn't have body cameras, that's it. You don't have a body camera. It's based upon your word, just like it was throughout all of policing. So his tactics were absolutely horrendous. But it doesn't change the fact that it proved she hit him with the car. And he believed, any reasonable person in that scenario would believe that their life, that he is in danger of serious physical injury or death from the person inside the vehicle. As law enforcement, where he was literally telling her to stop. He placed himself in front of the vehicle. Again, horrible, horrible tactics. But he felt in that scenario, he was, I don't know, I don't want to put what he felt in there, but in that scenario, the shooting was justified. I was talking to a good friend a couple of days ago, and we were kind of having a little debate about this. And I'm like, look, I'm not scared of dogs. I'm not. I've been on plenty of jobs where pit bull came running at us. I'm not afraid of pit bulls. I had a pit bull 14 years. I'll kick it right in its throat before I reach to get my gun and shoot it in its head. But a lot of cops will reach for their gun and shoot it. Now, there's been times when dogs have come running up, big pit bulls, and they're not coming up in a violent manner. They're just coming up to play. But a guy that's scared of a pit bull isn't going to be able to differentiate whether the dog's coming up to get pet and play with you or if the dog's going to come up to attack you. So I gave him the scenario. I was on a job. Dog comes running, gets off a leash, comes running at us. He's not running at us in a violent, tumultuous behavior. He's running to play, but he's a big, muscular pit bull. I'm going to reach to grab the dog's collar. My partner is going to reach for his gun to shoot the dog in the head. So what's my point in the story? My point is this. I didn't shoot him because I didn't feel the need to shoot the dog. I grabbed the dog by the collar. I told my partner, chill out. The dog's fine. Relax. I gave the leash back to the lady, and she went about her day. Now, if I wasn't there and my partner off that dog, guess what? He was justified. He was justified. What's the point of the story? Don't be that charging muscular pit bull charging at a law enforcement officer. Understand the scenario you're in, and you won't have to worry about whether the cop shooting you was justified or not. And that's the problem, is he kind of placed himself there. She put herself in that situation because she stopped ICE agents. She was part of this ICE watch. And then she slammed on her gas pedal when armed men were telling her to stay where she was, and clips an ICE agent and gets herself shot. It was ultimately her actions. Same way with the dog. Now, the dog doesn't know like a human, but we can't. Are we talking about if it's great tactics? Are we talking about what we would have did in the situation? No, we're talking about justified, not justified. He's justified in that scenario. Same way my partner would have been justified in shooting that dog in the head. Does that mean that I would have did it? Does that mean that Eric would have did it? Does that mean that Marlon would have did it? Does that mean that every other member of law enforcement would have did it? No. I think long-time NYPD chief, legendary chief Louis Anamone was on here the other day in the chat, and he said it best. It was lawful, but it was awful.
Yeah. We went over, like John said, we looked at that video on the last episode, and we agree that this strategy is like ineffective long term, because like we said on that episode, it's going to take them 37 years to going at this current pace in order to remove all illegals from this country. Remember, there are 12 million, at least 12 million illegals in this country. So it's ineffective as an overall strategy. But the problem here is that, you have law enforcement officials that are actually, they're not urging the public to remain calm and, let the investigation play out. And they're urging them to essentially, escalate the tensions even further. And that's very unprecedented, in the past, you always heard law enforcement, say we need to remain calm and let things play out. And now you're hearing the exact opposite. You're hearing these guys openly say things that you've never heard out of a mouth of a law enforcement official, especially against another law enforcement agency. And here's the other thing. If these people have a problem with ISIS's the strategy being used now, why are their complaints being directed towards the boots on the ground? You know, they know full well that the officers on the ground aren't the ones deciding policy. You know, you don't want to, if you have a problem with it, why don't you call out Trump and you call out the Homeland Security, but they're not doing that. Yeah, okay, and it's because they don't really care about it. You see, they don't really care about the overall issues. Yeah, they care about what they care about is you know, being activists and being operatives for the progressive industrial complex. They've been given a set of scripts and instructions and told to go out there and do their, you know, play their part. And again, a lot, if you look at the history of a lot of these people, they played their part pretty well in the last scam from the progressive industrial complex. And if we could just go back to the sheriff, this is her during a couple years ago. So you know,
Shocker.
yeah.
Do you think
She was playing her role pretty
do you
well.
think she was pushing the vax on all her employees?
Look,
Oh,
look at that mask. That tells you all. You know, it's funny, right? She told everybody
Mm-hmm.
not to wear a mask. And look at her all masked up. Ironic.
Well, she absolutely was pushing the vax. In fact, the sheriff's department. I'll see if I could put up the video. The sheriff's department around that time had a video for the public about taking the vax. Okay, what does the sheriff's office got to do with the vaccine? Okay, but the sheriff's office did back then.
So not only is she a law enforcement expert, but she's also a medical expert. Got it.
Huh.
And she could wear a mask, but ICE can't. Got it.
She's also a religious accommodation expert too, I'm sure. She
I'm
probably knows
sure.
all the religions.
Yeah, she knows everything. She could tell if you're faithful or not.
Yeah.
You know,
She forgot she was telling everybody they shouldn't wear a mask. She must have forgot about this photo.
that's what the morality police looks like there. And unfortunately, they're in every major city across the state. They forgot about the law. They're judging you based upon your morals and your politics.
Vaccinated is one of the most important things you can do today.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm here at a clinic where
so
people can get
this
vaccinated.
was the video on their website.
Come get
during,
vaccinated.
a couple
It's
years
very
ago.
important.
Dude, you got please send me those after the show because she's got to get blasted. She needs some reminder about why law enforcement can't wear masks from herself. You know,
Yeah, think about the irony, right? She's ranting and raving how no law enforcement officer ever should wear a mask. Ever. She didn't say there are exceptions. She said ever. She must have forgot about that. But again, what do these chiefs all have in common? Take a knee. Figuratively speaking, or actually literally speaking, take a knee. In order to move up in these democratic cities, you got to be on your knees, and so is she. They're all moving in lockstep. You know, what's important to I think to highlight what people don't understand. What Marlon just said here is absolutely right. That's what I've been trying to say. Marlon just said, why are they attacking the boots on the ground? Why don't they attack the people that actually create legislation? Why? Because I'll say it again. The boots on the ground are the most tangible form of government. They can't change it from the top down. So change it from the bottom up by creating distortion, by creating chaos amongst law enforcement profession with the boots on the ground. So some people will say this was a homicide, right? The loss of Renee Good, loss of life is a homicide. Now, yes, you're right. But they're playing on people. They're playing with narratives here, and they're playing on semantics. Is it a homicide? Yes. What is a homicide? When you take the life of another. But what they don't tell you is that it's a justified homicide. Now, because something is justified doesn't mean it's perfect. Policing itself, policing operations isn't perfect, right? Which means it has flaws and mistakes. So while it is a homicide, it's a justified homicide. Now, if a police officer in any incident is involved in a scenario, let's say a police officer decided that someone had a legal firearm that had bad intentions with it, is in close proximity, and decides to use their taser because police departments throughout this country, especially the NYPD, are pushing the taser, and the taser is ineffective. And now the police officer is forced to use their firearm to shoot this person. Is that bad tactics? That's bad tactics. That is bad tactics that is pushed by law enforcement agencies that now furthered and caused the officer to use their firearm. Now, if a police officer decides not to use their firearm and wrestle with someone with a gun. Some people might say, well, that's bad tactics, right? And then the police officer has to use their firearm. Well, that's the point. I think what John was saying, and what we're saying here on this platform, is that tactics could be ineffective. They could be inadequate. They could be mistakes involved, but there's no correlation between the tactics and whether something is justified or not. Those are two completely, we're talking about apples and oranges. Now, could the tactics have been better? Absolutely. I thought the tactics were absolutely horrendous, but that doesn't negate the fact of the motivations behind the person of interest, who is Renee Good. So that's what people understand. The tactics are terrible, right? The police officers have to do their best to keep everyone safe by good tactics, but we're not talking about the actions of the person of interest. The actions also did lead to a justifiable shooting. So I think that these Democratic chiefs are absolutely irresponsible. And while I think she's a complete idiot, and I don't think she ever did actual real police work, I still believe she's making a conscious decision and knows that she's pushing a false narrative and driving the emotions of weak-minded people to feed on this and just to ignite the flames. These mayors and these chiefs are moving in lockstep together to ignite the flames for the Democratic Party. No longer are these chiefs of local police departments or elected sheriffs. They are part of the political apparatus to drive the needle in this country. And they are creating, figuratively speaking, a civil war amongst local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, local politicians, federal politicians. We have come to a point right now where the rubber hits the road. And if this doesn't get resolved in 4 or 5 months, as Marlon told you, I think that this profession may be damned to where it's almost to the point taken over by artificial intelligence, which ultimately, I believe, is the ultimate goal.
So now she's obviously, like we said, she's elected. So she's a politician. This is what Philadelphia elects and who they want as their sheriff. She's not really in a place to do anything to ICE at all. So I don't really even know what she's talking about. She's just out there making a stage for herself. But here's Portland Police Chief Bob Day. So two members of Tren de Aragua were shot by Border Patrol, right? They were wanted violent felons. They were members of a violent gang. They were here illegally. They tried to take the life of an officer. And here's Bob Day's response. And this is Bob Day, in my opinion. He should be next in line for the NYPD police commissioner job, because he would be the perfect NYPD police chief, because this is who rises through the ranks in policing currently in big cities. In big blue cities, you're not going to get the guy who's the most experienced. You're not going to get the guy who's the most competent. You're going to get the guy who's the most compliant. And that's what Bob Day is. Bob Day is a spitting image and a perfect example of what an appointed police chief in a major blue city, the characteristics of what these politicians look for. And here it is. Here's Bob Day to weigh in on this shooting. Listen to Bob Day.
And what I can say is there is an association with the two folks yesterday and TDA. I hesitated to even share this information initially because I'm very aware of the historic injustice of victim blaming, oftentimes portrayed by law enforcement, including this very agency that I've represented so proudly for so many years. And historically, we have not been quick to disclose the potential criminal history of others. But I felt it was imperative because I was asked yesterday in the news conference what information we have. This is information we have. This in no way draws a through line to the actions or the behaviors that occurred yesterday. I want to speak for just a moment specifically to my Latino community. It saddens me that we even have to qualify these remarks, because I understand or at least have attempted to understand through your voices, your concern, your fear, your anger. This information in no way is meant to disparage or to condone or support or agree with any of the actions that occurred yesterday. But it is important that we stay committed to the rule of law, that we stay committed to the facts, that we stay a trustworthy and legitimate police department for all of Portlanders.
So there he is. There's Bob Day. And unfortunately, and I think this is what we need to realize, is that Bob Day is the epitome of what is wanted in law enforcement today, in law enforcement leadership. They do not want a guy like Mike Marino. They do not want people that will stand up, competent people that understand the law, that are unafraid to push back at politics and are going to push back with the truth and what actually happens, or to someone that's going to sit there in a masculine stance and calm the nerves. They want a kneeler. They want a COVID vaccine pusher. They want a mask wearer when the government tells them, but when the government says no, then they don't. Then masks are bad. So this is what they want. Bob Day, in my opinion, you want to run a police department in a major blue city. Bob Day should be your idol, because that's the only way you're getting there today, is to be spineless, to have no balls, and to wake up in the morning and make a big, huge breakfast for your wife's boyfriend, whatever he wants, while you were sleeping on the couch last night because she was busy getting her thing on.
Yeah. So, the thing is, these guys are all similar. Okay. Now, in the case of that sheriff, I actually think she's a social justice warrior and she's an activist, right? But these other guys, they all float around academic circles and think tanks. And I've already called out the Strategic Initiatives Bureau in the NYPD as being the heart of a lot of the wokeism in the NYPD. Because if you look at a lot of the training documents that you guys are forced to watch, all these stupid videos, right? A lot of them come from, they're like the brain trust of the department, and they're filled with woke academics, ideologues, and people who have pronouns in front of their names. And interestingly enough, if you look at these guys, you'll see that they've all been connected to some form of strategic initiatives, whether it be in NGOs or in their departments themselves. Okay, in case of Brian O'Hare, which we'll get to, he's the guy in Minneapolis. He's the police commissioner. He comes from Newark, and he was basically in charge of their strategic initiatives over there. Yeah, and again, like I said, whenever you hear that term, you should automatically think that exactly, Mike, the hive mind, the woke hive mind, and the woke mind virus is big over there. And when these guys come out of that, they all push the same agenda for the progressive industrial complex. When you look back at the scamdemic, a lot of the policies came out of that bureau. Okay, in the case of the NYPD, it came out of that bureau. That bureau is the connection between law enforcement policy and corporate wokeism from Wall Street, through a lot of times through their police foundations. And in the case of ours, keep in mind also Isa Abbasi, who you've heard the name thrown around many times, because we all believe he's going to try and get his way in there when Tish is gone, right? He also ran our strategic initiatives, okay? And again, he's another guy who is hooked up with a progressive industrial complex, because he quickly got a job in Jersey afterwards, right? From a very leftist attorney general, by the way. But that's another episode. I just wanted to point out to you guys that whenever you see strategic initiatives, and whenever you see that connected to any of these commissioners, you should already, a light bulb should already pop in your head about what you're getting, because you're getting corporate wokeism here. And sure enough, that's exactly what's happened in this case. Now, we'll get to Brian, but this is an article he wrote about pushing the vax during the scandemic. So you'll see, guys, that there's quite a connection between all these guys now who are now being elevated in those who've now been elevated to those positions, who are now pushing the agenda now. You'll all see that they pushed the agenda back then too. And I don't think any of this is a coincidence.
I tell you what, get this guy in a Hollywood movie. Someone call Steven Spielberg right now, because I think it was pure bullshit and crocodile tears. I think exactly what I told you earlier on in this episode, that these chiefs, they're not activists. These doctors are not activists. They're actors. That chief was an actor. I guarantee when he put that speech together, whoever put it together, okay, at this line, start the tears. At this line, get the tissue. It was so dramatic. He took his glasses off and he had, make sure you have the tissue ready. You got the tissue? You got the tissue wiping his eyes. Pure bullshit. And it's sad. Is it really that good to get stars on your shoulders? Is it really that good to get stars on your lapel? Is it really that good to be a chief that is standing on your knees, figuratively and literally speaking at this point? I mean, listen, I don't know his career. We know her career. It was pretty much of an empty suit. I'm sure his is the same thing. However, even with that, you still understand the nuances of policing and you're eating your own. These people are straight up evil. Evil that you can cry bullshit tears. That was so fake. That was like pleather couch right there. Get the glasses, put the tissue on, cry now. Yeah. Joe Roscoe says, bring out the ball bag. Yeah, exactly. Bring out the ball gag, because that's what this guy should be wearing. An imposter. You're the chief of a police department and you're putting on these fake crocodile tears. Are you serious? Seriously. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's so fake. In 6 months from now, he's not even going to remember Renee Good. He's going to think it was Rebecca Good. He's not even going to remember what her name is or even the incident. These people are so fake. They're actors. They're all moving in lockstep. They're these weak people that think it's necessary for self-promotion. They're evil. There's no other way to put it. This is like, I'm not a religious person, but to me, this is like anti-God, that you're lying on TV and you're just making things more inflammatory. Look at that. Does that look real? That tissue was folded, ready to go. Oh, Barag's in that tissue wiping his eyes. You're full of shit, you bum. Get the ball gag for every one of these fake chiefs imposters. It's absolutely ridiculous. Get her a ball gag too. It's funny. They all say, oh, never wear a mask. Yet they were all wearing the mask during the vaccine mandate. And if you are an NYPD chief or a high-ranking person and you were pushing the mask back then too, you should ask yourself if this would be you right now. And these chiefs right now in the NYPD, if this happened in New York City, would you play this game also? Get that tissue ready, because it's not just ball gags. Get your tissues ready. This bunch of bums right here. It's disgusting. They're evil. John, I'm sorry. I don't know. We talked about this before. The cowards are worse than the rapists and worse. These people are worse. They're worse than violent criminals on the street. They're absolutely disgusting.
Well, they are. They are the enemy within policing. I mean, like Marlon just showed you exactly what it is. They were all pushing the COVID narrative. They were all pushing the vaccine narrative. And here they are all pushing the anti-ICE narrative. Now we're going to get on Brian O'Hara, who looks the part of a police officer, looks the part of a man, looks the part of someone who has testosterone, but clearly has no spine, has no morality, and doesn't care about anything in policing. And he is the epitome of what Eric Adams attempted to remodel the NYPD as. I'm going to put these guys up here who say some tough things, but the reality is they're just a bunch of woke progressives. You know, I love watching the dichotomy of watching John Schell now out there on social media, pretending how he wasn't pushing all of this garbage and he wasn't pushing this anti-ICE agenda for the last 3.5 years until Eric Adams got indicted. I love it. It hasn't lost me at all, is that, like, I know why he sits up and he's gaggling over us and drinking himself into a stupor and then tweeting at us, because he's having a hard time going through what he did, the things he did. And, you know, Brian O'Hara is going to be right there with you, because that op-ed's forever. All of his press conference is forever. The same way that John Schell held Eric Adams' pocket around the yard while he pranced around, and he continues to, right? John Schell, now in retirement, continues to hold Eric Adams' pocket and let him drag around the yard. Eric Adams, the guy who his entire career was being anti-police. His entire career was being anti-ICE. His campaign promises were that the NYPD would never work with ICE. His campaign promises were that he was going to lower the overall headcount of the NYPD, and he was going to do it through attrition. And he was going to do it, and he was going to take that money and give it to programs like dyslexia screening. $600 million to $1 billion. That is defund the police, people. So when people tell me that Eric Adams is common sense, Eric Adams is law and order, Eric Adams is a moron. And John Schell's a bigger moron for going along with it. And then John Schell went out on social media. And because crime was so high, their plan was they were going to take a bunch of untrained rookies, throw them out in the middle of Midtown Manhattan, give them cars, allow them to smack up these cars, keep them safe from CCRB by violating the law, keep them safe from the state attorney general's office because, hey, we're in with the Democrats. And he was going to let them run around and run old people over and run disabled people over and run children over, all to get a guy who had a fake plate who was going to be DAT'd and released from the precinct 3 hours later. And then what else were they doing at the same time they were doing it? They were taking the guy that they just ran an old lady over for, who they were chasing through the streets of Midtown Manhattan, and they allowed him to become a police officer. Right? Because we saw that happen too, right? We saw a kid who not only fled the cops, but cops were injured in those pursuits, become an NYPD police officer under John Schell's reign, under Eric Adams' reign. So don't anyone dare ever tell me that Eric Adams is pro-police or Eric Adams has common sense or Eric Adams was good for the NYPD. He was the most destructive mayor to policing in the history of this country. More NYPD cops retired under Eric Adams' reign. More NYPD cops have retired early under Eric Adams' reign. More NYPD cops have resigned under Eric Adams' reign than at any other point in New York City history. So here's John Schell to come to bat for Brian O'Hara. John Schell says, I have not weighed in on Minneapolis, but now I will. Self-defense, moreover, I support Brian O'Hara. Most people respectfully have never been at this level, and it's easy to criticize. So what John Schell's saying is he's saying, well, you were never the chief of department. And you're right, John. Most of us were never the chief of department because most of us have a spine. Most of us have integrity. Most of us have morality. Most of us will not take a rank or a paycheck to benefit ourselves, something that's going to be completely destructive towards the profession and towards the people that we claim to care about. But you decided that you were just going to hold your progressive leader's pocket and have him walk you around the yard like his little bitch. So he says, those of us who rose to this level, not rose, you were placed there because of your compliance, John. Let's get that straight. It wasn't your competence level. It wasn't your miraculous history and your great prestigious career that you had, because anyone that looks at your jacket knows you had no business being in the police department in the last 15 years. You should have been asked to leave a long time ago, if not charged criminally. So you didn't rise to that level. You were placed there. You were placed there by holding on to your mentor's pocket, Jeffrey Madry. So let's get that straight, John. And then he says, it's hard to balance politics and policing. It's not hard. Politics has no place in policing, but somehow through weak, emasculated, impotent men like yourself, they allow politics to go into law enforcement. I don't see Brian tearing up or acting like a fool from PA. I see a chief trying the best he can. Let's support our brother. So again, when I look at Brian O'Hara, what I see is a fraud. What I see is a traitor. What I see is someone who I wouldn't even trust to go out with the women and pick berries. He is not someone that is a police chief, because in order for this profession to survive, what needs to be done in policing is the traitors need to be rooted out immediately. The strategic initiative chiefs need to be rooted out immediately. The DEI chiefs need to be rooted out immediately. So while some people credit Jessica Tisch for cleaning up the corruption in the New York City Police Department, I don't. Because what needed to be done immediately was every executive member of the NYPD, not captain and above, but 2 and 3 stars, they all needed to go ASAP. Every single one of them, I would have chopped their legs off right from the thing. I would have said, thank you for your service. Those of you where criminal investigations will be needed, we'll be calling you back. For the rest of you, we appreciate your service. Thank you. You are all now demoted back to the rank of captain. You've all failed miserably the last 10 years. And that is just the case. I don't care. Great guy, not great guy, was a great cop, wasn't a great cop, doesn't really matter to me. The fact that you went along with this and you stayed silent and you did absolutely nothing and you only seek your own self-interest and your own self-paycheck, and you let this department be destroyed by this corrupt Skell and his friends, is the fact that you no longer, you proved that you are no longer that police officer. You became a politician, and your service here is no longer needed. So, and you can't pick a command. We'll be notifying you. Here's your notifications.
Yeah, let's think for a second how stupid it is for Chell to comment on this. Okay, it's absolutely moronic for Chell to talk about this. Because why? Because when Chell was chief of department, he was the one pushing his rookies. You know, those 2-year, 3-year wonders in CRT. A lot of them who, again, you're still new. Okay, he was pushing them to do chases in the middle of Manhattan. Okay, and how many incidents have we seen where CRT rammed guys with the vehicles? Okay, how many lawsuits are pending right now from CRT because of this? To me, it's just unbelievable that Chell even comments on this. You know, you would think it's like these guys sometimes are completely unaware of things. You know, it's like you have tons of lawsuits pending right now for the city. You know, why are you commenting on here? Okay, you have no ground to stand on this. Okay, and yet here he is. Okay. You know, but again, as we've said before, we think that again, Chell is being propped up again to push narratives in the media spotlight. And as soon as he's been retired like what, 2 months now. In fact, actually, he's still probably running his time. So he's already on a media stage. He's already getting gigs and on what is it, Newsmax. This guy is clearly. There's clearly a push behind him, and we know for a fact that he's connected to Dr. Phil. Okay, and Dr. Phil himself is also connected to big money. Okay, but we've said before that he's being pushed to be a media personality and push certain narratives in the mainstream media, and here he is doing his job. Okay. When he really should be shutting up because of all the stuff that all the litigation that's pending for the city, and litigation that's because he encouraged this over aggressive behavior.
Well, I think John Shell is the last person that should weigh in on this case. He should just be happy that he's walking the streets freely, and he rose to the rank of chief of department by being a Skell bum loser that is just completely inept, inadequate, and pandering like everyone else. Politics and policing doesn't mix together. It's not supposed to. And that's why when we speak on this platform, politics has injected policing because it's supposed to be a separate dichotomy. They're not supposed to commingle together. They're not supposed to work in tandem. Absolutely not. Why should John Shell not weigh in on this? Because in 2008, John Shell took the life of someone in East Flatbush in Brooklyn, right? And he claimed that he was struck by a vehicle and he accidentally fired the shot. Yeah. So if John Shell is getting credit because he accidentally fired the shot and took the life of another, this ICE agent was intentionally struck with the vehicle and at least had the whereabouts and intentionally used that firearm, where John Shell claims that he accidentally fired that shot when he was struck by a vehicle. And at the civil trial, John Shell was found guilty at the civil trial, and there was a $2.5 million payout. So John Shell is the last person that should weigh in on this, not to mention the fact that very questionable practices about how he filed his taxes, and yet still rose or appointed or given or hung around long enough to become the chief of department in the NYPD. So it's interesting how John Shell constantly tries to make himself relative, right? As he says, for us that rose to the rank of chief of department. He's just trying to inject himself into a conversation. Politics is injecting and infecting and policing, but John Shell is trying to inject himself into conversations because he's no longer relevant. He wasn't relevant then because he was so unprofessional. He sure as hell isn't relevant now, but he's fighting for relevancy. So John Shell is the last person that should be getting involved and participate in this conversation. To me, he has no say and no footing on this. If 2008 incident that John Shell was involved in was right now, there would be a different eye on it. I don't think John Shell would be walking the streets freely today.
Yeah, so before we get on to Brian O'Hara, I think it's important to understand whose pocket he holds. So this is Mayor Jacob Fry out of Minnesota, right? Minneapolis, excuse me, right? I consistently confuse those two. But so the question gets posed to this little half man, this little elf. Can Minnesota cops arrest ICE agents? Listen to how he responds. He responds as if he is controlling an army who he could at any time use that army against the federal government. Listen to this mayor, this half man, this crier, this kneeler. Listen to what he has to say here. This is Brian O'Hara's boss. This is who Brian O'Hara shakes his head for. This is who Brian O'Hara holds the water for. And then we'll get into 2 press conferences with Brian O'Hara. But 100%, Brian O'Hara is a traitor to all of law enforcement. He's a traitor to the profession. He should resign immediately in disgrace and apologize to anybody who ever wore that uniform, as well as anybody in the public who had any faith in him whatsoever, that he wasn't just a political hack. Because absolutely disgusting individual. But again, these are the people that rise to the top in law enforcement today. These are the people that rise to the top. The person with morality, the person with faith, the person that cares about the rule of law, the person that cares about the profession, the person that cares about the public. They're no longer in the profession. They were rooted out. Here's Brian O'Hara's master.
You're getting to, which I have not wholly answered yet, is like, you're basically asking, can our cops arrest them?
Yeah.
From a legal perspective, yes. From a practical perspective, to state the reality, yeah, it does get kind of hard when they drastically outnumber us and they have bigger guns than we do. It does. And here's the thing. We don't want to create warfare in the street. We want to keep our communities safe. We're trying our very best to do that. So nobody, our police officers, ICE agents, civilians, nobody can act illegally. Nobody can. And so we're trying to find the best way to prevent these ICE agents from acting illegally while not causing a firestorm on the street. Am I saying it won't happen? No, I'm not saying it won't happen. What I'm saying is, like, you know, I am in charge of keeping the peace and directing our police officers, and I got to keep everybody safe. And so I can't commit to anything.
He won't say that he won't arrest an ICE agent, but he won't say that he will. I mean, this is insane. He goes, well, we could do it. Legally, we could do it. No, you can't. First of all, it's a lie. Secondly, he's going out there and saying ICE are acting illegally by conducting immigration enforcement. Like, what are you even talking about? And then he's like, well, you know, we could do it, but we're severely outnumbered and severely outgunned. But I haven't ruled it off the table yet. I'm like, I'm the police chief there. I'm going right on the meeting. I'm going to be like, this guy, like, he needs to tone the rhetoric down. Nobody's locking up ICE. This is an incident that'll be investigated. Let them deal with it. Our job is to protect. The thing is, like, again, I'm going to say it. I said it on the last show, but I'm going to say it again. All of these mayors, these sanctuary city mayors and these sanctuary state governors are all sitting there telling you that they don't want ICE on their streets, yet their policies dictate that ICE has to be on their streets. If they allowed ICE to cooperate with local law enforcement, his little cuck police chief and the rest of them across this country, if they allowed that to happen, ICE wouldn't be out on the streets because they would be inundated with getting these ICE detainers. The police department would come across someone who's here illegally, who committed a crime. They would see the person has an ICE detainer on them. They would call ICE up and say, hey, here they are, come get them. That person would show up to court. The courthouse would say, here they are, come get them. That person would respond to any other municipal agency. Here they are, come get them. They would be in jail. Oh, look. Oh, Rikers Island, we have 7,000 people in here currently with ICE detainers. ICE would be inundated with doing that work. But instead, they're like, no, we're not going to cooperate with them. Run out on our streets, get them instead. And hopefully we could have incidents like this so that we could push our rhetoric even further. They want ICE on their streets. They're completely lying to you. That's what people don't understand. And they're using cucks like Brian O'Hara and Bobby Day to push this bullshit against you. And people need to wake up and start. When you look at a guy in uniform, you need to say, wait a minute, they're letting this guy talk. He's reading a script right now.
Yeah. These mayors don't care about their actual citizens, the residents of their city. Because if you did, you wouldn't, you would want policies, effective policies in your city. You wouldn't want. Again, we talked about the impracticality of ICE's overall strategy. It's going to take 37 years at that pace, which is impossible. It's not going to happen. These guys are going to get burnt out. Even if you could do it, these guys are going to get burnt out, right? You need a whole of government approach, which includes the cities and states to do their part. And you picked up an illegal for committing a crime, you got to hold them for ICE and have ICE come pick them up. But and this would make things run a lot smoother than they do, and you wouldn't need ICE to come and conduct these massive raids. Okay, by and large, you wouldn't need them, but they're not doing that because they don't actually care about the residents. If you cared about the residents, right, you wouldn't want ICE to conduct raids on Canal Street when people are going to work. Okay. You wouldn't want the massive inconvenience it would cause, okay? Let alone the large scale protests that is causing, okay? You wouldn't want the inconvenience pushed onto the residents of your city, but instead these guys aren't doing that. They don't care about their residents. They care about the industrial complex that's been built up behind their political parties and the political establishment within their own municipalities. And that is what they're doing right now. They're protecting it, And I honestly, like I said, we're going into a new place I think it's going to happen as soon as a couple months. And I think we're in a blow off top where you're seeing the last days of this, because what's coming is a framework where cities, where mayors can no longer do these things because the money won't be there to do that. Somebody's funding these protesters, and as we said on Friday, a lot of that money is government money, and we're headed to a place where the government isn't going to have the money to just hand out willy-nilly to people who made it a career out of showing up on the streets protesting every other week. So again, I think we're seeing the final days of this, and it's not going to go out quietly. They're going to go out screaming and behaving like the spoiled children they are.
Well, I think we come to a point right now where the enemy within, the biggest enemy to law enforcement, is not the public. It's not even the anti-police rhetoric by the media. It's not even these politicians. The enemy within are these empty imposter suits, these imposter chiefs. They are the enemy within. Why? Because they're prioritizing optics over safety. Now, nowhere in hell are local law enforcement permitted to arrest ICE. That's the most ridiculous thing. Now, if that were true, which it's not, if in fact that was true, that would still be so irresponsible by weak mayors to say such things like that. And then for a chief of a police department that understands policing and the nuances and to keep people safe to actually fall around that narrative is absolutely embarrassing. How does a man put his pants on every day, one foot in the other and one foot in the other, look themselves in the mirror and say, wow, I'm actually important to this profession, after pandering to someone that's, that couldn't even bench 135 pounds, but is basically asking and calling for civil war in the streets of America. That's absolutely ridiculous. Again, putting optics over public safety. I'm disgusted by watching this, Brian O'Hara. Absolutely the epitome of what we talk about these white chiefs in this country that pander to politicians and to their masters, just complete cowards. He should be a chief in the NYPD right now. He really fits the mold. These cowards that just get right on their knees. It's absolutely disgusting, but it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter if it's the NYPD. It doesn't matter if it's a manipulist. What matters is that it's a democratic city. So in all these cities, why don't we just remove the patches? No longer should it be New York City Police Department. It shouldn't be Minneapolis. It should just be policing of the Democratic Republic. That's it. Of Democrat Republic, because that's what these chiefs are doing. Absolutely irresponsible. It's just complete, like, no balls. Again, every one of them, every time they say this stupid stuff, I wish I could jump through this StreamYard right now and throw a ball gag in their mouth and shut them up. Because what they're doing is actually creating and escalating more violence in this country, right? We hear from Democrats about de-escalate, and it's ironic. And their rhetoric is so inflammatory that it's escalating the situation second by second. It's so irresponsible. It's disgusting. The enemy within is exactly that. It's a chief in a Democratic police department that's a complete imposter that's actually creating this environment, making it more hostile and creating more havoc.
Again, we talked about this a long time ago on this podcast, but it's really sad to watch that, people like, oh, law enforcement, they'll never do that. They'll never take our guns. I'm like, you don't think they'll take your guns? I'm like, really? They'll come and take your gun. They'll do whatever their masters tell them to do. If their masters tell them to come around and put their mother in a gas chamber, their own mother, they would do it. And I'm not exaggerating here. I'm not being dramatic. Whatever their masters tell them to do, they will do. Doesn't matter what it is. Come to your house, take your property, whatever it is. Because we watched it. We watched it in 2020. We watched them change from providing public safety for their residents to becoming social workers and kneelers. We watched them go from being police officers to medical Nazis. We watched it. We watched them. We watched people. I was always told, don't ever give medical advice. Yet I have chiefs of police giving me medical advice. I have fellow lieutenants, captains, sergeants, cops giving me medical advice that they know nothing on. Their logic makes absolutely no sense. And they're literally enforcing unconstitutional law. They're telling families that they can't stand within 6 feet of each other. They're telling a husband and wife that they can't walk on the streets of New York 6 feet together, but they could go home and sleep in the same bed. They're telling you can't enter a restaurant standing up without a mask, but you could sit down at that same restaurant and pull your mask down. You think they won't walk their mother into a gas chamber? They'll walk you into a gas chamber. They wouldn't even think about it, and they'll justify every single thing they do. And this is the danger of having weak men, right? There's a famous quote. It says, you think strong men are dangerous? Wait till you give weak men power. And now we're seeing it today. There's no way for this profession to survive with the traitors remaining at the top. There's absolutely no way. And there's no clearer traitors than these men. And in my opinion, John Schell showed me exactly who he is. He is a bully. He is a bully for the progressive politicians in this country that want to upend our system of government. And Brian O'Hara is just a younger version of him. Here's Brian O'Hara at the press conference of the ICE-related shooting.
Our chief of police, I'll invite him up.
My name is Brian O'Hara, BRIANO''HARA. I am the
He didn't give his pronouns? Brian, no pronouns, Brian?
Minneapolis police chief. This morning, Minneapolis police officers received a report of federal law enforcement being involved in a deadly force incident, meaning shots had been fired. Minneapolis police officers responded to the scene. We arrived and found a woman with a gunshot wound to the head. Life-saving measures were performed at the scene, including CPR. The woman was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center, where she has since been pronounced deceased. The preliminary information that we have indicates that this woman was in her vehicle and was blocking the roadway on Portland Avenue, midway between 33rd Street and 34th Street in the city. At some point, a federal law enforcement officer approached her on foot, and the vehicle began to drive off. At least 2 shots were fired. The vehicle then crashed on the side of the roadway. Minneapolis police officers secured the crime scene and assisted in trying to preserve the evidence that is there. We have since turned over the scene both to the Federal Bureau of Investigation as well as the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which will be conducting an investigation into this use of deadly force. I want to thank the mayor, city council president, other members of the city council, state legislators that were on the scene. This has been a very difficult time for everyone in the city. And this is obviously a very, very tragic situation where a woman has lost her life. That being said, in addition to this tragedy, which unfortunately we did predict, we were seriously concerned about further escalation from the scene. And I want to thank the elected officials that came themselves to help us prevent that from happening, as well as the individuals on that scene that remained peaceful and that abided by law enforcement instructions so that we could preserve that scene and ensure that a full and transparent investigation can take place. That being said, I just echo the mayor's comments that we ask that the community continue to call for peace. We understand people are going to be upset about what happened, and people are going to want to exercise their First Amendment rights. But please do so safely and lawfully to ensure that we do not have any further tragedy in this city or destruction. Thank you.
So I got Brian's pronouns for him: slave and cuck. That's his pronouns. You forgot your pronouns, Brian. Shame on you, like a good little dog. Because if you'll listen to what he said there, he didn't actually describe what happened. He only said that the woman was shot. He didn't say she was a member of ICE Watch. He didn't say that she was blocking in the ICE agents. He didn't say that she struck the ICE agent with the car. He left out all of those pertinent details and then went out and said, oh, but make sure you go out and protest. But make sure you go out and protest, because that's what's important. And thank you, Mayor Fry, for pitting my officers against federal officers. And thank you, Mayor Fry, for lighting the flames of division in our city. So now my cops have to deal with it. And now my cops are on standby 24/7, and all their days off and all their vacations are canceled. Thank you, Mayor Fry. May I suck your toes after this press conference. Cuck and slave. That's your pronouns, Brian.
Hey, John, I was wondering if he spits or swallows, but I think now I know. I think I know. With the ball gag in his mouth, I think he swallows. So
he likes to get kissed after. No, he likes to get kissed while it's still in his mouth.
I think so. What they call it?
Right.
Snowball? I think he likes a snowball. I think he snowballed Jacob Fry. Oh, and the mayor. Oh, thank you to the mayor. Thank you to the city council. I mean, it was so dramatic. The only thing is, honestly, if he was in the NYPD, I think he should go in the minor violations log because he forgot a couple of props. So shout out to Day, because Day had the props. He forgot the glasses. He forgot the tissue. So he was a little off. His acting, I'd say 1 to 10, he got about a 7. Day got about a 9. Yeah. Where's my tissue? Can I get my tissue, please? Jacob, excuse me, Mayor Fry, do you want me to take it on the face? Do you like it? Where do you like it? You ever see those videos where they ask the girls where you want someone to finish? He should have asked Jacob Fry, where do you want to finish? My face? Because that's what it seemed like. Oh, my God.
All right, that went
Okay.
off the rails. Marlon, bring us back.
Yeah, that guy.
Sorry.
Full
But
of hot
it's
air.
hard. It's hard not to. Like, it's hard listening to this shit. It
Oh,
really
it's
is.
terrible.
Yeah. Listen, we already talked about how these guys have been pushing an agenda since way back. But if you guys, I saw some comments in there about Democrats. It's not just Democrats, okay? It's not just Democrats. You have to zoom out and look at how both sides. And I'm not talking about the boots on the ground, okay? I'm talking about the policymakers. You got to see how the policymakers are kind of pushing both sides together and kind of creating the situation where it's like both sides are kind of like are warring with each other. And in order for you to understand this, you have to. I think zooming out again needs you to look at the what's going on between us and the global economy, right? Reason why I'm saying that is because we're separating from the East, okay? And it's not going to be as easy as it once was for you to order anything you want from China, for you to get your cheap electronics from China, right? In a couple of years, your computer may cost you like double or triple because the price of RAM now is like, it's almost like the cost of a computer itself for a piece of RAM. And that's because, again, we're separating from the East, and China is now kind of like they're kind of rationing the chips that they have and the parts that go into the chips. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because our economy right now is being, everything is being focused on AI, right? And when you look at police departments, you see the obsession with drones and AI and all these technocratic tools. And I think what's happening is not just that these guys have been given a script, but the script is to push that because the entire economy is going to be dependent on the AI. Since we don't make stuff, and we won't be able to get stuff as easily anymore from China, the economy won't be based. It most certainly won't be based upon making stuff in the interim. That's going to take years to build up the factories. So how are these big companies going to stay alive? Well, they're going to stay alive via AI. And you see all these big tech companies that are keeping up the stock market are all in AI, and it's all like one big circle jerk right now of money. And your cities, your police chiefs and commissioners are all repeating the same talking points, even though they may not sound the same. They're all talking about tech. So what I think is happening here is that these guys are furthering that push. They're right now trying to rile up the leftists on the street, because the more civil disobedience we have, right? The more civil disobedience we have, the more need there is, the more justification there is to have AI and to continually invest in that infrastructure, okay? And they especially need it because in order for you to return that real production into America, for us not to depend on China, that's going to take years to build the factories, okay? Years to build the factories. So again, what's going to keep these companies alive? Well, the surveillance contracts with your city government, with your state government, and with your federal government, okay? And which is why, like, Palantir is big in Homeland Security. Palantir is big in the NYPD. We've had a contract with them since the mid-2013s. This is why there seems to be a consistent agenda being pushed by all of these chiefs, because again, they've been given a script, and they've been given a script from high above, okay? Because when you have Trump putting up a meme on social media about Venezuela, do you think that meme is helping the cause right now when tensions between these leftists and ICE are so riled up? It's not. All it does is inflame these leftists even more. These guys, when they see that meme, are gonna blow a gasket. And Trump has just given them the motivation to spend next weekend out in the street protesting. So you see, both sides are being riled up because there's a complex that needs this to happen. Otherwise, a lot of these companies go broke. Okay. So I thought I couldn't continue talking about this unless I bring that up, because it's a missing piece in here that's telling you why these guys are continually pushing it. Why a guy who looks the part of a police chief, right? And yet he talks like his balls have been snipped out. Okay, he can't be forthright with people, and it just doesn't make any sense from the onset. Sure, you look at the sheriff in Philly, and you can see this lady is like, she believes it. And I've talked many times before about how that stuff is ingrained into the black community from decades of indoctrination. But you see a guy like that commit, like the chief in Minneapolis, and he looks the part. Okay, this guy looks like he's ready to get in a car and go bring in a body, an arrest with his cops, and yet he's spewing the same BS. Why? It's because there's an agenda at play here, and you have to zoom out to understand what's really happening.
Well, shout out to our friend Mikey G. How you doing, brother? Who's always here. Says, please have an award ceremony for best chief in a crisis performance. That's exactly what this is. I said earlier in the episode, it's just pure acting. They're all putting on an act, and you can see it. You know, you ever watch a movie where you watch someone, pretend to be like a martial artist or a tough guy? Sometimes you see like some small statured female, like Jennifer Lopez, kick everybody's ass in a movie, and you're like, it's just not believable. That's the same thing looking at this chief, right? He fits the part. He's in great shape, and you're like, man, this guy just doesn't fit what he's spewing out because there's an agenda behind it. And I said it early on in the episode, I believe this whole profession is going to implode. And in several months, maybe up to a year, a good majority of it could be artificial intelligence and robotics. And that's the direction we've been moving in for a long time. And how do we get to that point to try to push it further is by creating chaos, by ripping at the most tangible form of government, which is the police on the ground, and transition everything to artificial intelligence and robotics. So that's why I believe that they want this inflammatory response, and they want the reaction of the public to be emotionally driven, is to get away from the law enforcement profession, to move to AI and robotics, and everybody makes money out of it. All the private contracts involved in AI and robotics are just completely deteriorating the profession. We'll remove the human element and go right to it. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, these performances by these chiefs just are not believable. And some fit the part, but exactly what you said. When you watch Brian O'Hara, it just doesn't seem to make sense. He doesn't seem to fit the part. And it looks, it doesn't look authentic. It looks like it's manufactured. The way he's looking at the mayor, and almost as if he's memorized the script. And they all have memorized the script. And the script is fall in line. Fall in line. If you want to stay in that spot that you're in, if you want that extra star, and I don't know, after you get enough stars, what's after that? A 3/4 pension? I don't know. And maybe we should ask John Shell. But it's obvious it's something in it for them. They play this role. They play this game. And that's why I say it's just straight up evil. Because these men and these women that are imposters of chiefs, they have to lay down at night. They have to look at the ceiling and know that they've just been living a complete lie. And that's why it's really sad that we've come to this point that these tangibles are more important than moral principle. Having the money to have a nice car, or having these stars on your shoulder, or having this prestigious position in law enforcement. Is that really so important? You have to live with this. And being a chief, and this is my message to some of the chiefs throughout the country, if you watch this platform, is it really worth it? Because it's temporary in life. You're not a chief forever, So that's a temporary position. It's a temporary story. Your story goes on after that in retirement or your next career, whatever you want to. Do you want that to be your whole story? Is that you lived a lie, and you have to live that lie to yourself? John, what's that story you always tell about? What's it called? The from the Bible, the whale. What's that story? That's kind of what they're living.
Talking about Jonah.
Jonah, yeah. That's a story that these guys have to live, and they have to live with themselves. And I just think that it's evil. Just downright evil. And I guess kudos to these politicians that they find the right people to move up in the ranks, that they're willing to play this game. And because I believe that's why people like yourself, John, and Marlon, and myself, and have been pushed out of law enforcement, because we're not going to play that game. And they found ways to have us eradicated from this profession because we're not playing that. There's no way that we could stand there and say, "Oh, thank you, Mayor," and take it in the face, knowing damn well we have to lay down at night and we have to pave the way for our children to live a life that makes sense, and say, you know what, my father stood on moral principle. I don't want my kids to see that and say, "Oh wow, look what Daddy did. Daddy just played the game. It's really sad.
Yeah. They don't believe themselves as evil. They look at themselves as patriots. The men who are capable in policing, who are going along with this, they look at themselves as patriots, as doing something for the greater good. And this goes for the politicians too. A lot of them believe this, and that's a phrase that was used a lot during the scandemic. Do it for the greater good. Do it for, do it for Granny. Do it. Look at the bigger picture, and so they don't look at themselves as being evil. Now the ideologues and the activists, like the sheriff in Philly, they view it as our time. Okay, it's our time, and that's another phrase that's been used a lot in the last priors, especially by Eric Adams' cronies.
Well, see, and that's the thing, is why I say, like, if you look at major blue cities across the country, and I'm talking about everyone. I'm even talking about, I know everyone's praising the Chicago chief, but I'm gonna 100% refrain from doing so. He said one good thing one time doesn't mean anything to me. If you look at what he's been pushing about, crime is down, perception versus reality, I could care less that you have one good soundbite out there. People hook on these sound bites today, and it's like, oh, you see that, chief? That's you see how great that was? And my thing is, they target two specific qualities. One is complete cowardice, right? But even more important than the cowardice, because at some point you could change, right? At some point they could push you too far. They really go for incompetence. They really go for incompetence and low IQ. That is the major trait you will see with these police chiefs. They're not competent people. They weren't competent cops. They're not competent in their own lives, right? You get a guy who was on the side to try to make extra money being a basketball referee, and he's using his brother-in-law's name and doing and committing tax fraud. Basically, that could ruin him. It could destroy his entire career. It could force him out in the street. He could lose his whole career, but he's willing to do it to save himself of such a minimal amount, maybe a few $100s for the year when tax time comes around. So it's insane. Like, when you look at stuff like that, you're like, how'd that guy get to the top? How did that guy get to the top? It's because that's what they really, really want. They want people that are solely, completely incompetent. Now, Brian O'Hara, here he is. Here he is, and this, to me, is the epitome of incompetence. You put your guys into a very bad position. This video comes out by way of Nick Sotor on X. Check Nick out. Make sure you give him a follow. Good friend to the podcast. He's out there on the streets of Minneapolis, and you're going to see in this video, you're going to see Police Chief Brian O'Hara. And you're going to see just how competent he is in his ability to lead, just how competent he is in his ability to control crowds and move crowds and to keep his men and women safe, as well as the businesses and the people who are there peacefully protesting, as well as the people who want no business to do with any of this stuff, just want to walk in the street or maybe drive home on the street. Complete, utter incompetence to the point where him and his officers run away. Let's see how. And this is why I say they target the incompetent as the lead, because you have to be stupid to go along with this. Because not only your family might be benefiting in the short term, but in the long term, you're destroying your profession, you're destroying your city, you're destroying your state, you're destroying this country. So you have to be a moron to go along with this.
Really?
Here he is. Here's the chief right there in the leather jacket.
Hey, Chief, why are you letting your city get like this? Why are you letting your city just walk like this? Let's go. What the fuck is going on?
Now look, they're running away.
You're a bunch of fucking bitches! Fuck you! No, not me. It's not me. Oh shit! Let me back.
Look at the empty storefronts over there.
Yep. Prime real estate, dude.
What the fuck happened?
They're getting in their cars and they're running away.
Yeah, I can. What do they all have in common? Democratic failed cities.
Yep.
Fail.
Yep.
Yeah, no shame. I feel sorry for those cops. I had to follow that chief. Hey, don't think this can't happen in New York City. Don't think your chiefs will make you run away. Too.
That is how competent these people are. They're not competent at all. Completely incompetent. So you could look the part in uniform. You could have muscles. You could look like you have some testosterone in your body. Really matters none because you're completely incompetent. You're really truly dumb. Like, that was disgusting what you just witnessed. You witnessed a group of officers run away from a crowd, leave their citizens and those businesses to fend for themselves, and again appease the mob. That was what you just witnessed, is the same thing as them taking a knee, as him being up at that press conference, as him shaking his head right next to Fry when Fry's saying this insane wacko stuff that's really pushing this division between municipal law enforcement and federal law enforcement. And then what's worse is when we start to go to all of these now talking heads. You know, when you look at all of these talking heads, you either get the back to blue all the time guy who's like, yeah, no, you could just kill people. Yeah, you could just shoot them. Yeah, no, it's justified. Yeah, good. I'm glad she's dead. Or you get the other idiot that's saying, no, that wasn't justified at all. You know, I don't know why she was shot. And like, there's really no nuance anymore in the people that go out there on the news and talk about these incidents. I like, there are good people out there. Like, I'm not saying them, but I'm saying the majority of people. I like Paul Morrow. I like Chris Strom. I like Mike Alcazar. They're good representatives. But a lot of the people, the paid talking heads, the John Millers, even the Bobby Boyces, I got to be honest. I listened to some of their breakdowns, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about, and I don't think you even know what you're talking about. And that, to me, that is a major problem when people are pointing themselves off at experts and they're really handed a script from their producer. It's like, well, I make $500,000 a year and I don't do too much. And you're like, yeah, I got no problem to go out here and inflame division on the streets of this country. And I'm just going to read the script, even though I don't agree with it or I don't believe in it, or I don't really know what I'm talking about. Because, dude, I'll tell you, I get calls all the time about a lot of different things from major media. And I'm like, no, I'm not comfortable talking about that. Thank you. I get true crime calls all the time. No, I'm not comfortable talking about that. Thank you. Appreciate it. And to me, it seems like there's a lot of people out here in law enforcement. They get a call and they're so willing to go read a script and push a narrative. And that's what they're looking for. And that's another big problem today in law enforcement, is these talking heads that come out here and they push division on both sides. There's no nuance anymore. And, I haven't heard one person on the news talk about how the ICE agents' tactics were horrendous, how they really shouldn't be out on the street, how the ICE should be allowed, the police department should be cooperating with detainer requests, how the municipal governments, and how actually the shooting was justified, but it still was terrible shooting. Haven't heard one besides us.
Yeah. Shout out to Inspector Morrow. He I was there when he had his retirement. He had like a little retirement thing at Intel, and I thought the job lost an asset when he quit. Because when I heard him speak, I thought, man, this guy's he's really intelligent. So and believe me, I've been around tons of bosses at that level that I'm like, how the hell is this guy a chief? This guy's an idiot. But so shout out to him, and we shouldn't be surprised that he's doing big things in the media too now. But I looked at that video and I pointed out the empty retail space there. And the thing is, these law enforcement executives need to understand that, when you're not being forthright and you're not being honest with the public, and you don't want to call things out as they are. If I'm a business owner in that city, when I see things like that, I'm like, oh man, I'm like one riot away from losing a ton of money here. And not just that, but my foot traffic is going to decrease because people are going to, my city now has a reputation to it, are people going to want to, are tourists and out of town folks are going to want to come in my city and walk around and shop in my store? No. So I'm already looking for my exit. Okay. I mean, not just that, but keep in mind that in a lot of these blue states and in blue cities, that everything's much more expensive. You're paying higher taxes. You're paying, costs are much more expensive just because of the reckless, the irresponsible spending and reckless taxation of these cities. So on top of that, now you have the government services that you pay high taxes for aren't coming in. They're not doing their part. So why am I staying? Why am I going to stay here and be the sucker that has to end up paying for this out of my pocket? No, I'm looking for better places. And this is what's happening. This is why these places are all losing residents, and they're all going to the red states with responsible law enforcement executives. Okay. They see the writing on the wall and they're leaving. And if you're an executive of these blue states, including former NYPD executives, when you go on these shows and you kowtow to the media and you fail to stand up for it, and you create this atmosphere around your peers that it's okay to be, to softly endorse these protests, okay, and the anti-police environment, right? You're creating that environment in your city, okay? You're creating that environment. And you may not live in those cities anymore, but your pension is still connected to it, okay? Your pension is still connected. And again, if the city cannot afford to do its part to hold up the solvency ratio, for instance, in your pension, then your pension is going to have problems. So people need to just be smart and understand what's really at play here. You okay? Instead of continually kowtowing to these people.
This country was built on the freedom to assemble, and this country was built on protests, and protests have created a lot of movement and a lot of good. But with protesting, free to assemble in a location where you're not impeding traffic, you're not impeding bystanders, and these protests are not freedom of assembly. They're actually teetering riots, and they're acts of domestic terrorism. And what's important to understand about terrorism is that the physical confrontation of terrorism is actually minimal in comparison to the psychological warfare behind it. And the psychological warfare is to change the ideology of government. And that's exactly what they're doing. Who's the most tangible form of government? Policing. And these protests or these movements, or I say domestic terrorism, has changed the ideology of policing. And you see it with this chief right here, right? Because the ideology of policing should be to face your terrorist head on, to face the issue, the confrontation head on, and put a stop to it. But instead, this chief is directing his police officer to flee the scene. So they accomplish their mission to change the ideology of law enforcement profession. Again, the most tangible form of government. And they're attacking government right now. This is an act of terrorism. And you learn that in the military, that the ideology in terrorism is far more important than the actual physical component of it. And that's what they're doing. They're changing the ideology of law enforcement profession by having this chief and having his personnel, his cops, flee the scene. So what does that do? Psychologically, the psychological warfare behind it, it emboldens these crowds and these agitators even more. It empowers them, and it weakens the police force even more. And it's all done by psychological warfare. Now, let's watch this idiot here who could just completely panders. I think it's great how the media, the politicians, these mayors, they have found the right people are playing this game. They're all playing a game. Let's play this narrative. And Let's watch. You'll see this game play out right here.
So this is retired NYPD Lieutenant Darren Porcher, now Dr. Darren Porcher, who is a professor at a lot of different universities and considers himself a policing expert. Darren served about 3 years in PSA 7, then was a police officer assigned to the Civilian Complaint Review Board, then was a detective assigned to the Internal Affairs Bureau for about 3 years. Then, after a stint at that, became a sergeant assigned to the police academy as an instructor. Then he was a lieutenant assigned to Transit District 3 as a platoon commander and counterterrorism coordinator for a year. A year after that, he was assigned to personnel for promotional. Then and that's about it. That's about the majority of his career, unless I'm reading this wrong somewhere. Yeah, no, that's about it. So, like, not much street time at all. But he's a professor, he's a law enforcement expert, and he teaches on tactics. I'm pretty sure with 3 years experience, there's not going to be a lot of arrest there. Which means if there's not a lot of arrest, there's not a lot of car stops, there's not a lot of encounters, there's not a lot of pickup arrests, there's not a lot of pickup stops, there's not a lot of stopping people on street. You're not going to get that without repetition. And so now, when this man comes on the news, he speaks. And what I find is crazy is that a CNN anchor, Scott Jennings, is more grounded and based than a retired NYPD lieutenant is. So listen to this. Listen to this law enforcement expert weigh in on the ICE shooting.
Procedurally, this is not sound, but from a law perspective, it can be somewhat questionable.
All right, Scott.
I mean, contrary to what I heard out here the other day, this person was not a random passerby who just happened to be driving through her neighborhood. This person is part of a group of people who form convoys to interfere with federal law enforcement operations. They drive convoys of cars into active law enforcement situations. They interfere with ongoing law enforcement activity. This is a felony to do that, A. B, this person had been following ICE around all day, apparently, according to witnesses, now according to further reporting. C, they didn't follow lawful commands to stop, get out of the car. D, they accelerated a car into the officer. It clearly hit the officer. I don't understand how you could watch this video and all the other videos that have come out and not come to the conclusion that this is an unfortunate, tragic situation that was caused by someone, the person driving the vehicle, using extraordinarily poor judgment from top to bottom. Doesn't make me happy. I don't like it. I hate this. I don't like it when U.S. citizens or anyone dies in any kind of a engagement with law enforcement like this. But this person exercised extremely poor judgment and put themselves in harm's way, probably committing a felony in the process. And this is the result.
I mean, so like just right then and there, I mean, it's wild to think that this is who's training our people, right? We saw Rachel Bilau's training the cops. This guy was training the cops. All of these people that were trainers. And I actually just got a funny ass story from a Philly cop who said that they did a warrant right when she was sworn in as the Philly sheriff. And she shows up for the warrant, Bilau, another police trainer, and she says, I am the Philadelphia sheriff, right? I am the Philadelphia. And he said what was most notable about after they had their TAC meeting about it, she walks over to her car and refuses to open the door to her SUV. And she yells at her driver, excuse me? And the driver ran around, opened her door for her to let her get in like she's royalty. And this is what happened. We've allowed these people who are willing to hold the water for these billionaires and these politicians and drive narratives to have these nice, comfortable lives where they feel like the rest of us are beneath them, but intellectually, they are light years below us. And we're watching it clear as day, but yet these are the people that are the panelists on all of these law enforcement talking points. These are the people that have these law enforcement expert gigs, that have these law enforcement shows. And they're literally the worst amongst us. They are the traitors in our midst that have sold the profession out and have sold this nation and this truth out. And again, I'm going to say it one more time. If this is going to survive, we're going to have to weed them out. We're going a little long today, but before we get off, I just want to touch on this political summit that these unions are going to have. And they're ultimately also traitors. I believe they're even worse than the appointed because they pretend that they're there to fight for you.
Yeah. Well, I think we shouldn't expect different from Darren because think of it, he's part of academia. If he says otherwise, he's gonna get ostracized by academia. And these guys are always, in addition to that, these guys are always jockeying for their next role in government. And they're always, they're always suckling at the tit of the progressive industrial complex, waiting for their next government appointment. I think it's hilarious that a lot of them, again, I'm mentioning John Shell, makes $30K a month, and yet these guys aren't free. You can't. They're not free to say what they really mean and what they really want. They always got to filter their language and always got to appease the progressives, around them.
Here's a water boy here, Mike Zoe. He loves the corruption inside the New York City Police Department. You haven't been around in a while, Mike. You can't shoot at a moving vehicle. Simple argument. Enemies within, try enjoying retirement. So, Mike, while you're out there pretending that you're a cop on social media and in your daily routine as you're getting paid by the city of New York, let's remember something, right? When a car is coming at you and being used as a weapon, you can. But considering you never made any car stops and will not make any car stops, it's not anything for you to concern yourself with. Just keep sucking at the tit of those bunch of corrupt skells running the New York City Police Department. So have a nice day, Mike.
I'm sure Mike So is a real police expert, just like Darren. It's funny how they find all these guys that did not do police work to be police experts, right? Just like Dan Bongino. All these people that have no police experience are police experts. Again, they all suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect. The least you do something, the more you think you could do it. So that includes you, Mike Zoe. So here we go. What Marlon's talking about is absolutely right. What happens is people like John Shell or people that move up the ladder in this way to, because they want money and about greed, they can't open their mouths and say certain things. They have to follow a narrative because they owe people favors, because people have leverage on that. That's what's so unique about this platform is no one has leverage on John, Marlon, or myself and Rob and Ron. No one has leverage on us on this platform. And Tom
not even Eric Sanders.
Not even Eric Sanders. Well, I guess that's a conversation for another day. But I can tell you what, on this platform, no one has leverage on us. We don't owe any favors. It's not about greed. So that's why we don't have to follow a specific narrative, and we just want to seek the truth. But for people that have to follow a specific narrative, I think that's a horrible way to live, because you owe people favors, because people have leverage on you that you can't actually speak freely. And that's why I say John Shell has to constantly just trying to find relevancy and speak about his pension, his 3/4 disability pension, because that's all he has. Because to me, I'm sure it's a lonely life, and it's probably miserable. He'll never admit it, to have to lay down there at night and know that everything you're saying is a lie, and you have to follow this narrative. In my opinion, I think that would be exhausting, and I think it's a terrible way to live. And I don't want to live that way. I'd rather have the money that I have, which is far less than John Shell. But you know what? I could stand on my own 2 feet, and I could express myself with my First Amendment right, because I don't owe anybody, because I don't owe favors, because no one has leverage on us. So I think that's the way to live. If you don't want to live like you're controlled because you got favors. These little favors along the way, are they really favors? But they're more like attachments. These are control mechanisms, and that's how they get control. Oh, your daughter, your son. Oh, we'll make them a detective. You want another star on your shoulder? These are favors that you just keep owing people, and you can't speak your mind. So is it really worth it? I don't think so. So let's get into this summit. While it sounds like a good idea, but if the reality is, if there's no follow through, It's just toothless lions. And that's the bottom line. If, the idea of this, it sounds good on paper, but if there's no follow through, it's toothless lions and it falls flat in its face.
Yeah, I think so. We talked about how, Scott Monroe was attempting to be the kingmaker and form this coalition, and then they went out and endorsed the most corrupt mayor in modern New York City history, as well as the mayor who decimated the New York City Police Department and caused violent crime to rise over 30% in New York City, where it still remains today. So he failed miserably at that attempt. And now here he is again, and he's again at the head of this statewide summit planned for New York City to make police officers a political force. Politicians are not invited. Look, I like Tina Moore, but I kind of like Scott, to be honest with you. But I don't think Scott's good at his job. And I think, you could clearly see that there is this coalition, that there are a continuous amount of stories being leaked directly from the DEA to Tina Moore. And they go to Tina Moore for every piece of legislation or any time he wants to do anything, like any type of public relations campaign that he wants put out in the media. And we covered a lot of those stories here. I think the biggest one was that he was going to, for the first time in history, never been done before, where he was going to bring his detectives, the members of his own union, into the political arena, and he was going to give them the ability to vote on who the NYPD's Detective Endowment Association was going to endorse and fund for the President of the United States. Now, that survey had went out, and it came back 94% in favor of Donald J. Trump. Not only did the Detectives Endowment Association not ever endorse Donald Trump, they never even released the results of that survey publicly, even though he went out and did a whole press and media tour. And we showed you that New York Post article, went on One Tough Podcast to listen to, Bo Dietl's show, that probably only listened to it because we shared it here. He went out and did that, and it was like, whoa, wait, I thought you were bringing people into the political arena and you were going to give them a choice. And then he teased that, we're going to do that for the governor election, and we're probably going to do that for the mayor election. But then he didn't do it for the mayor election. He decided he wanted to be kingmaker. And now that the governor election's here, he's attempting to do the same thing. And I mean, come on, everyone knows what's going to happen. All of these unions that are involved in this coalition, the Monroe brand, as Pat Donahue has called it on here, everyone, we all know what's going to happen, right? This is a dog and pony show. Kathy Hochul controls these unions. She threw some crumbs at them for them to feed off, to be like, oh, look, we got these bills that were no impact, that cost no money, bills that should have never even needed to happen because we should have never have gotten them taken away from us in the first place. But Kathy Hochul's been the most radical New York governor, second to only Andrew Cuomo. So they're going to come out and they're going to endorse Kathy Hochul. I'm not the biggest fan of Bruce Blakeman, but I'll say that Bruce Blakeman has been a devout supporter of law enforcement. And if you have to put their track records together, I'm going to say that Bruce Blakeman's the guy that I would vote for over Kathy Hochul. But what this coalition is going to come out and say is they're going to come out and say that they're going to vote for Kathy Hochul. So this whole tough talk, politicians aren't invited, it's completely being controlled by politicians. And again, this is just more self-serving bullshit coming out of these unions. And the other point I want you guys to take note as is there's all keynote speakers, there's all people that are going to be there, but one that's severely left out, not that he's a good speaker or a good presenter, is Patrick Hendry, the president of the the former Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, but that was too gender specific. So we made it the Police Benevolent Association, the PBA, Patrick Hendry. Now, Pat Hendry is the president of the largest municipal police union in the world. He also is a member of the largest unit in New York City and in New York State. So how the hell is he not on this board? How the hell is he not speaking up there? So Pretending that we're going to make police officers a political force is an absolute joke, especially when it's coming from a bunch of dudes that live out of state. That live out of New York City. They all live in New York. They all live in Long Island or upstate New York. And that's why New York NYPD police officers are no longer a political force in New York City like they were the first 100 years of the NYPD. Politicians on both sides had to pander to the NYPD because they needed that vote. But now that guys like this no longer live in New York City, they're not a political force. And now they're seeking to combine through the state. And again, I think that is what may be good for police officers statewide might not necessarily be a good thing for New York City. And, so the members, again, should not be gaslit by this. I think this is just another public relation campaign. It's full of shit. And I would bet money that at the end of the day, Kathy Hochul is going to be there, who they are going to be endorsing. And the hypocrisy in that is they're sitting there and they're saying they're doing this because of the new administration, talking about Zohran Mamdani's administration, right? So you would think that they would be opposed to all of those talking points that Zohran Mamdani and all of the legislation and all of the things he wants to get passed. But of course they're not, because Kathy Hochul endorsed Zohran Mamdani. She supports all of his legislation that he wants to get passed, and she supports all of his rhetoric. So the whole thing is a dog and pony show. It's full of shit. Sorry, Scott, but it is what it is. This is exactly what it is. And for the rest of you on that board, same goes for you too as well. Maybe some people are going to buy it. Maybe some old people are going to read the newspaper and be like, oh, wow, look, the cops are fighting back. Or you're going to get some dumb, incompetent cops to be like, oh, yeah, look, they're fighting for us. But it ain't coming for us. That's for sure.
Ditto. All kidding aside, well said, brother. Well said. I think you laid that out extremely well. I think what's interesting about this is that Zohran Mamdani now has only been the mayor of New York City for 12 days. It's January 12th. He's the mayor of 12 days, but yet the illusion has been created that the legislation that has been the downfall of New York City has been created by Zohran Mamdani, who's only in for 12 days. So they want you to believe that Kathy Hochul doesn't stand behind bail reform, that doesn't stand behind the chokehold ban, that doesn't stand behind removal of qualified immunity. They want you to believe that Zohran Mamdani somehow, who's been in office for 12 days, had created the inception of the mishaps of policing. So, John, I agree with you. What is effective on the state level is far different from what's effective for city level in New York State. Policing is not a one-size-fits-all. In New York City, it's a complete different animal than New York State. It's just things move differently. People live differently. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Why is it important to do it on the state level? Because most of these politicians, and I say politicians, union heads, they are politicians. They're not uniform police. Uniform police actually wear a uniform from time to time and do police work. So most of them live in the state. So it's important to them because they may work in the city, but the majority of what affects them is what happens on the state level because they live in the state. They live in Orange County, Rockland County, Putnam, Nassau, and Suffolk. Most of them do not live in New York City. And what's interesting about the union heads, they cannot relate to the cops that are on the ground right now. They have not worn a body camera. They have not had to hand out a business card. They have not lived under legislation of diaphragm law. And so I agree with you, John, when it comes to the politics of this. It sounds good on paper. That's why I said it sounds good on paper. If you don't look at this, oh, wow, look, they're fighting back. But the reality is this falls flat in its face already. They're toothless lions. And this perception and this ideology and this illusion to make people believe that Zohran Mamdani on day 12 has been the demise of New York City, has created all this legislation. I think people need to wake up and realize, I'm not saying Zohran Mamdani is great for New York City, but Zohran Mamdani, if you believe that, is Eric Adams and is also former Mayor Bill de Blasio. So you have Zohran Mamdani, you've had Zohran Mamdani this entire time, just in a different name and a different face.
Yeah, I think this is another grift. I think this is another distraction to keep guys going along with the program. Because think of it, if Scott himself said he had Eric Adams' phone number, and he could have called him anytime he wants. Okay. So let me get this straight. You didn't have the balls to just push back against Eric Adams and the vax mandate. Okay. You don't have the balls to do it now. Okay. Even years after the scamdemic itself, you couldn't even make a statement about the situation that me and many other people, not just the fired cops, but those guys who were forced to leave their career early. You can even put out a statement for that. But you're telling me now you got the balls to actually, push back against Mamdani and all the other nonsense in the state. Give me a break here. This guy is this is just another distraction. So you're not looking at him when when the union does endorse Kathy Hochul, or when the union contributes to her campaign. This guy. How about you just be a freaking union president, Scott? Okay, before you become you try to become kingmaker and why don't you just be a damn union president? It's not that hard. Okay, it's not that hard. You just, I mean, again, something as a simple statement. The entire union doesn't even want to acknowledge that like me and some of the other. I know there's at least one more, who I think he was in the bomb squad. The union doesn't even want to. The union wants to pretend we don't even exist. Okay, right? How about you be a union president first, Scott? Okay, is that too much to ask? Is it too much to ask that you do the job that detectives pay their dues for? I don't get it, man. But I suspect there's more going on behind the scenes about all of this too, besides just the mere distraction that this creates. But I can't prove it yet. But I'm telling you, I think there's just more behind this, because it's just funny that Pat Hendry isn't involved in this at all, seemingly.
Yeah, it looks to me like Monroe really wants to be in the political world, and he wants to be like Eric Adams holding the billionaire's mayor. He wants to be close to those politicians, and that's what it appears to me. It appears that Pat Hendry wants nothing to do with Scott Monroe. I mean, clearly he didn't come out and endorse Eric Adams either. I can make fun of Pat Hendry's haircut, and I can make fun of the way he talks, but he didn't come out and endorse the New York City's most corrupt mayor. He didn't run there when the rest of the unions did. And I'm curious, like, who's going to be in attendance? Who else is going to be in attendance? So it's really, really eyebrow raising. The other thing that really bothers me is, the amount of work that people like myself, you, Marlon, Mike Kane teaches for Choice, Bravest for Choice, Matt Connor, Sophie, all of these people that have put in to get people, terminated workers for New York City back, and the zero effort that was put in by the unions, it really, really, really bothers me. And I just sit there and I go, like, what was that about? Like, why did they just leave their own members out there? And I think it's because, again, anyone that they see as a political threat, they're never going to help get back to work. Anyone they see that could potentially unseat them, they're going to make sure that they never become a delegate, never become a board member, because ultimately the only thing they are seeking is to keep and maintain control of their own power. They don't care about the legacy of this department. They don't care about the legacy of even their own union. So it's all self-serving bullshit. And I think that's one thing that happened. Eric Adams teased that he was going to rehire terminated New York City workers right before he left office. A lot of people were excited about that. There were sanitation workers that have been out of work for 3 years, firefighters, cops, detectives. There were many people that have been out of work for 3 years and have been unable to sustain since that time. And they were willing to go back without back pay. But they weren't being forced to sign away their right to sue or anything like that. So they were able to seek litigation, come back to work, even though it really was a raw deal and it was such a bad deal, but they still wanted to do it. And, Marlon, I was like trying to tell Marlon, like, dude, you should go back. And he's like, I'm not doing it because this is just another humiliation ritual. I'm not going back without a full apology, without everything that was due to me. He's like, this is another humiliation ritual. And more than likely, it's not going to come to fruition. And, and I had spoken to a lot of the politicians about it, and I had gave all those same worries that Marlon had. And I had said, look, here's my main thing. Does this get done before Zohran Mamdani comes into office? Because we already know he doesn't support the reinstatement of fired workers. He already said that he wouldn't. So does it get done? And, they beat around the bush with it. And sure enough, it didn't get done because DCAS forgot to vote on it. I don't think they forgot to vote on it. I think it was never getting done. It was always a humiliation ritual. And then to watch the guy, Louis Molina, who was in charge of DCAS, but gave himself some bullshit title in the New York City Police Department to get himself back into the pension system as the director of internal affairs, never serving one day there, only to benefit himself, which in my opinion, God help you if I ever get into office, because you're going to have a big bill to pay, and you're going to be facing criminal prosecution for a lot of different things. And everyone that signed off on it too, Police Pension Fund executive director, I'm talking to you too. God help you, because that is absolutely wrong what was happening. He went back in there, and so he was saying, well, we can't rehire Marlon Bethel. We can't put him just back into the pension system because he's been out over a year. We can't hire that guy. We can't hire this guy. But then he flouted the rules for himself. I mean, completely disgraceful. And, we had talked about it then, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but just one thing that we didn't know, and it hit me after we talked about it, is Marlon had pointed, there were only two other guys that actually had that title of Director of Internal Affairs. I forget the one guy's name, but the other guy was Joseph Resnick. And I don't know the other guy. Eugene White. I don't know Eugene White. I don't even know the years he served. I don't know anything about him. But I worked in internal affairs for 2 years under Joe Resnick. Joe Resnick was not collecting his police pension as Deputy Commissioner of Internal Affairs. He actually did work as the Deputy Commissioner of Internal Affairs. So it would make sense that he could re-enter the police pension system, but even he did not. He was only collecting his deputy commissioner salary until he turned 65, when he was able to collect both his pension and then his police salary. So he was not in the police pension system at the same time. So again, it was always done this way. You're only pointing it out now because it's black and brown. Show me who it was done for. Show me who the guy in charge of DCAS put himself in the pension system that earns himself the best money while never working for that agency as a uniformed member of law enforcement. It's a crime. I don't care what anybody's got to say about it. And whether it takes 5 years or 10 years, someone's going to be answering for it. And I think a lot of people are going to be answering for it. Sorry to go off on that tangent.
No. Listen, did a certain someone, I don't want to mention their name, I think we gave too much credit, say that this was the law and that this was appropriate? If you take 645 and multiply to 11, this is what you get. I remember a certain someone said
that racism.
Yeah, it's racist to say it's not real and it's not a law. First of all, I think that is not only criminal, but I think ethically it's wrong. Morally, it's wrong. It's just absolutely disgusting. And every time we bring up comparisons, just as we did now, we show that Resnick was not getting this the pension that was afforded to Louis Molina. Just absolutely ridiculous. And everyone should be affected by it emotionally, and you should have an invested interest into understanding that these pensions being misused could affect all our pensions one day. This is not something that's synonymous and guaranteed. The pension system isn't perfect. It's not a perfect system. And if we don't protect it, it will not last forever. It's not something that's a guarantee. Death and taxes, that's your only guarantee. Your pension is a great tool, but it's not guaranteed. It's something that we all have to protect. And that's why it's important, the squeaky wheel against the oil, that we speak about this. Because if not, these pensions will be lost and will be forgotten. And some of us will be far too old to get a job, and will be hurting, if we don't have these pensions to protect us. So it's absolutely ridiculous that they're utilizing this pension system in this manner. And that's why I've said before numerous times, just as you just said now, why couldn't you go back? Why couldn't Marlon go back? You know what? I would like to be commissioner right now. We've been working on the Finance Unfiltered. Why can't we get another pension? Because rules for me, not for me. right? It's just absolutely ridiculous. Just shows everything we've been talking about with this tiered system within policing, especially the NYPD, is alive and well. There is a tiered system, and if you're general population, these things don't apply to you. You don't have these amenities. You don't have these tangibles. The only thing that applies to you is discipline. For tier 1 and tier 2, these amenities apply to you. Everything's reachable and it's available at your grasp. But again, here we are, 2 hours and 40 minutes into it. I want to thank everyone. This unique platform, having our chat, which our friends and listeners, such engagement. We appreciate these comments are outstanding. And I think this problem here is coming to a tipping point. And if we don't see behind the walls of what's going on with these imposters of chiefs and people trying to be politicians within unions and policing, because there's no doubt about it. In the unions in the NYPD, they're not uniform police. The last time that most of these union heads put on a uniform was way beyond any of these legislation that's happened today. The uniform that is worn today is a complete different uniform than these guys have worn many years ago. With the business cards, the body cameras, the legislation we have, it is not the same job. They were on a different job. They are politicians. And that's why I say, if these unions really care, forget about the summit. Just put on a uniform, go out there, do some appearances, and tell me, how does the everyday cop feel? And after wearing the uniform several times, would you still vote for Kathy Hochul? Would you still make those same endorsements? Would you still vote for Eric Adams? I know, John, you know what? You and I are wrong, because Eric Adams got them a contract. Apparently, a contract is not something that's guaranteed. Eric Adams did something so amazing, and they endorsed him because he got them a contract. I get it now. So it's just at the point where I really believe that they're not cops. They're just straight up politicians. So these union heads are so far removed from policing. They are far more removed than we are. We've been retired for a little. I've been retired for a little bit over 3 years. John, you've been retired close to 4 years now. Same thing with Marlon. And I think we have more of a connection and more connectivity to the everyday cop right now than these politicians or union heads do, because at least we wore the same uniform. These guys are on a complete different spectrum.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to take years before all these issues get scrutinized. I think they are on their way. I get more confident of that every day, because I see the steps being taken to kind of to obfuscate the real fiscal health of the city, and those steps are no longer working, and they're running out of ways and distractions to keep us from paying attention, because when you go in the grocery store, everybody's noticing the cost of food, okay, and it's only going to take a while, a little while longer before people start looking at everything and start putting two and two together and figuring out that, there's massive corruption going on in the entire system, and that includes the pension fund. And I'm saying that this, just as a judge has rebuked Zohan Mamdani's attempt to control the sale of rent stabilized apartment buildings. Okay. You may not think that has anything to do with you, because we're in a police podcast, and why does this have to do with your pension fund? But it really does, because you see, what I suspect Zohan is doing on this is trying to slow the reassessment of property taxes for these buildings, because these buildings are no longer pulling in the revenue they did before. And when you go to a bank to refinance, the bank is going to want to see those books. And when your books are no longer like it once was, again, your property is not going to be worth as much. And again, a lot of these properties are being sold for much lower than they were, upwards of 60% lower. And that means whoever's buying it is definitely 100% going to look to reassess the property taxes on it. And what does that do? Well, that creates a budget gap. And there are thousands of these commercial properties that are in big cities, big blue cities. And they all know this reckoning is coming. And when this reckoning comes, I don't know how they're getting out of it, but I'm telling you this right now that everyone's going to have eyes on the budget situation, and cuts are going to have to be made, and we're going to have a come to Jesus moment about who is manipulating the system for their own selfish ends.
Yeah, John asked a question. He says, "Why are two shows on at the same time?" So there is only one show on the Finance Unfiltered platform going on currently. Again, so people want to make decisions what they want to do. They want to be co-opted by an attorney. That's fine. That has nothing to do with us. So there is only one show on the Finance Unfiltered platform airing, and that is it. So thank you guys for being here. We have over 700 people with us today. I know a lot of people you're asking in the chat. People want to do what they want to do. That's fine with them, but Eric Sanders, again, does not control the Finance Unfiltered. And if you want to know how Eric Sanders feels about that shooting, that ICE shooting, have him go out on the news or have him break that shooting down. And I'm pretty sure 99.9% of you aren't going to agree with him. But, Philly Sheriff Raquel Bilal will. Minneapolis Chief Brian O'Hara will. Portland Police Chief Bob Day will. So if you guys want to go hear that garbage, go right ahead. Everything's racist. A mile and a half run's racist. We're racist. If you want to go hear that, go over there. But if you want some unfiltered truth, that's what it is. So the bottom line is this. Law enforcement has been co-opted by bad actors. They're leading our police departments. They're more dangerous than the media. They're more dangerous than these anarchist groups. They're more dangerous than the politicians. It's the people inside that are willing to sell their soul. I think we showed that case here today. And you guys got anything before we go to the super chats?
No. I think we covered it all. And again, guys, it means getting out of your bubble and paying attention to what's going on in the news. Okay, that's halfway to understanding a lot of these things, even if they may have flown above you in this episode.
I just want to push back. Mikey G, one of our friends and listeners. Mikey G, how you doing, brother? You're here often, and this platform is part of a coalition. Especially John and Marlon at the front of this, fighting hard against the vaccine mandate, which you were personally affected by. And for you to say that this show is turning into a echo chamber, I mean, you obviously haven't been listening, because we're not following any narrative, and it's the only platform that's actually fighting for you. We've been fighting for you this entire time. And I just think it's absolutely ridiculous for you to say that this is an echo chamber. I think you haven't been listening, because there's not a specific narrative here, and we are very open to all opinions. So I find it quite interesting that you would say that, and I just don't understand where that's coming from.
Yeah. Let me get into that too. I don't understand that, Mikey G, because we're telling you not to participate into the back and forth, the left and right back and forth. We're telling you that you're being manipulated. Okay. How are we? There's find us a different platform that's telling you this. Okay. Everyone is telling you to pick a side. We're telling you that's the psyop to begin with, and for you to understand what's going on in the bigger picture. So I don't personally understand where he's coming from on this.
It's not even worth addressing to me, so I could really care less, Honestly, that's the dumbest shit I ever heard, Mike. So, you got
I'm surprised.
You got my number. You could call. We don't even agree with each other, so I don't know how we're in an echo chamber.
That's what I'm saying. Quite often on this platform, we disagree and agree. That's what's interesting, right? We don't follow a specific template, or we don't walk in lockstep. Right? Never has John or myself and Marlon said, you know what, when we start the show, here's the direction we want it to go in. Actually, we just say, all right, 5 minutes, you're ready to go? We go live. I don't even know what John's going to say. I have no idea what Marlon's going to say. They have no idea what I'm going to say. And then it just shows sometimes like-minded and common sense. Yeah, we come to common ground, but there's plenty of things we disagree on. And Mikey G, we have supported you in every corner. But hey, listen, if you think this is in an echo chamber, I don't even know why you're still listening.
Yeah, no. You could go hear the spin about one of Sanders' cases, about how all his clients are victims and how the police department's systemically racist against them. But they're good when they push him back against the Finance Unfiltered. So the Guardian's Power Hour. I heard it's airing right now. As we
if someone said that right now, that's pretty hilarious.
And by the way, you could bring on any guest you want on your shows on this platform. Okay, we don't, nobody controls the narrative. The problem is when the narrative is being tried to when people are trying to co-opt the network and try to turn us into Fox or MSNBC and make us spin a narrative, and that's not what we are. Okay, you bring on any guest you want. The main thing about the Finest Unfiltered is it's unfiltered. We're not narrative, we're not spin, we're not agenda, and that's what you need to understand about this situation.
No, yeah, 100%. And that's the thing is like, that's what people don't understand. Like, look, we let attorneys come on here. We let everybody. We had Zohar Mandani on here. We're having Hiram Monserrati come on here on Wednesday. So, I mean, like, a lot of people in the police department don't like him. You know what I mean? So we bring on people that we bring on anybody. We let attorneys on here that we agree with, that we don't agree with. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? We've had I've had back and forths with Serena Townsend way before she ever came on the show. And we had on here, we had a good show. You guys liked her, and I've had back and forths with her on social media. It's not about disagreeing with someone. It's about that when you're coming on this platform and then you don't like what we're talking about because it's in direct conflict with a case that you're pursuing. And then so you put veiled threats of litigation against this platform. You paint us as a systemically racist platform, and you say that we're only saying things and we're lying because we don't like someone based upon the color of their skin. Then you're unwilling to debate those points. We were still willing to give you a platform and come on here and tell us why we were racist and why we were liars and why you're right and we're wrong. And you didn't, but you think you're going to come back on here and still get free advertising and all this other bullshit? Absolutely not. We're not suckers, All right, listen, I grew up in the Brooklyn too. I know a street hustler when I see a street hustler. And you're not going to sit there and talk shit about me and talk shit about Eric and talk shit about Marlon and think we're not going to fucking respond. Because, that's absolutely ridiculous. So there is no echo chamber here.
And I support the mile and a half.
Yeah, a mile. Yeah. And Mike, if you think that a mile and a half run is racist, I mean, this probably isn't the show for you. I got to be honest. I got to be honest. I just got to tell you, and for anybody else, I mean, you guys are still welcome here, but like, I mean, we're off into reality. Like we're not grounded in reality. It's like, okay, I just watched the NFL game last night. I don't know. The fastest people I seen on the field were black. I don't know. Just watch the NBA. Same thing.
I'm sure they could do a mile and a half with their eyes closed. And that's the point. It's Mikey G. He says I never said anything about the mile and a half run. Yeah, but you're driving right now. It sounds like Mikey G that you're mostly invested in this because you are personally affected by the vaccine mandate. But we're calling out the truth here. There's no specific narrative, and that's the bottom line. We don't get on the air and say, you know what, here's the narrative for today. I have no idea what narrative Marlon and John is going to fall to. Neither do they know what my perception will be. And you know what? We don't have to disagree on everything either to show you that there's no narrative. But all we have to do is show authenticity. And that's right. We don't force anybody and say, oh, you have to watch a show and go along with our narrative. If you think it's an echo chamber, this is definitely not for you.
Yeah, so that's it. We didn't mean to pick on you, Mike, but I don't know. Honestly, that just annoyed me to hear that there's two shows on at the same time. That's absolutely ridiculous. But whatever. I think I'm gonna. Did I announce? I think I'm gonna start the John McCarty show soon. Times and dates to be released. That shit just pissed me off. Sorry, peoples. And Samara, you're right. I did grow up in Dungan Hills. You're right. My teen years up were in Dungan Hills, Staten Island. So shout out to Dungan Hills, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Those are my homes. I got a special place in my heart for Dungan Hills. So,
shout out to Royal Crown Bakery.
That's it, Royal Crown, baby. PS52. All right, let's get to the super chats.
Coffee and donuts, baby. Let's go.
All right, Crazy 10-7. I don't watch the Sanders Guardian Power Hour. Look. It is what it is, dude. Like, it is what it is. You know what? If you're gonna run on competing times, it is what it is. And unfortunately, that's in all reality, that's what it appears to be, and that's what it's been appearing to be for a while, and that's why it's not that anymore. So it is what it is. I mean, anybody want to comment on that or not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's right. It's disappointing too. You know. No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I just think it's intentional. This isn't Lowe's and Home Depot that we're trying to compete with each other, but that's the way it's starting to appear. Listen, you have your own eyes. You see what's going on. It's all good.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Marlon, anything? You don't have to.
Nah. I've said enough about it, and it's just disappointing, guys. You know, you can see it for yourselves with your own eyes. It's very disappointing.
He also says, Crazy 10-7, I watched the podcast that doesn't wear the ball gag and doesn't have the facial target big. All right. Take it easy. Like, let's not start name calling, you know. I'm good for that. Let's not do it, you know. All right, Eric S. Here he is. Oh, boy. Here we go. All right. The cop was wrong when he completed a deadly force use by placing himself in front of the moving vehicle. Wake the F up. All right. So, look, 100% tactically, he was wrong. I'm going to say it over and over again. I think tactically, it was a horrible decision. How you could prove in a court of law that his intention was to step in front of the vehicle because he knew she was going to hit him with the car so that he could shoot her is not going to happen, my friends. You know, but in a court of law, to prove that he reasonably feared serious physical injury or death when she stepped on the gas is much easier. That's why I gave the analogy earlier. Bad tactics doesn't mean a bad shoot. Because you have two different levels of training doesn't mean the shooting's bad either. Because you perceived a situation differently doesn't mean the shooting's bad. Again, that's why I gave that scenario. Pitbull charges me. I grab it by the collar or I pet it. My partner, Pitbull, charges at my partner. He rips out a gun and shoots the dog in the head. His shooting's still justified. Was it necessary? Maybe not, but it was justified. I mean, like, I don't know how to break it down any better. Like, we're not sitting here like, yeah, glad she's dead. She's an idiot. She did cause her own demise because my thing is this. Don't be that fucking Pitbull. Don't charge at grown men with a gun. And law enforcement officers, don't put yourself in the scenario where we're even talking about this. Comply when there's law enforcement around you with firearms. They're afraid. They have different levels of training. They have different levels of anxiety. They'll use it, and more than likely, they'll be justified.
Yeah. And he wasn't a cop. He was an agent, by the way. So.
But thanks for always being here, Eric. Yes, we appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for the coffee and donuts.
But we didn't get any cursing today or any. And I don't think you called us pigs today. So I was wondering what happened.
Eric's having an off day. He's having like real conversation.
I thought something was wrong, but good seeing you, Eric. Happy New Year. Yeah.
Who's next? Oh, here we go.
Pat Donahue. Here he goes. Make up super chat donation for last week because I don't want Eric to infer that I'm cheap. Mushroom coffee, organic protein, powder, cigars, and yellow Mai Tai strikes for the followers. Yellow Mai Tai, bag for mayor, baby. Woo!
Pat, thank you, brother. You're the man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. We're going to replace Jack Stern with the yellow Mai Tai bag. Much better, in my opinion. Got much better political analysis comes out of that, and police perspective comes out of that yellow Mai Tai bag.
Jack's got good tactics. He's got about the same tactical plan as Daryl Porcher. They got about the same police experience.
No, yeah. That's it. He's definitely a tactician expert, policing expert, you know, and a bodybuilder. You know, you just can't tell by looking at him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Objects are closer than they appear.
Yeah. Somebody. Today's podcast is sponsored by Adam and Eve Lifestyle Store for all your ball bag and other adult toy needs. See, that's how I know. That's how you know that Pat Donahue takes I-95 because he's familiar with Adam and Eve Lifestyle Store.
Oh yeah,
when he's headed down south. He makes his pit stops.
What exit is that?
I don't know. But I always laugh when you see those signs everywhere. I'm like, oh yeah. Reckoning. He puts welcome back again, Eric. So yeah.
That's when I froze.
Eric switched the Starlink for Eric's switched the Starlink.
I appreciate it. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
See?
HFL says, I'm amazed at the 180 on Sanders. Look, I don't think that I ever 180. So I don't know. I think I was always pretty consistent. I don't know. I didn't, I just let a lot of things slide, didn't say a lot of things. But now you want to call us racist and make veiled threats of litigation, then we could I'll be more willing to speak publicly about it. So
He had me at the mile and a half.
Yeah,
No.
don't look at us, HFL. It ain't a 180 against him. It's his 180 against us. Because apparently we weren't racist when he came on the platform like 10 million times, or when we would recommend Eric Sanders, or when I would tell you, hey, listen, I went to a department trial and this guy's good. He knows his stuff. He's a good lawyer. I said it, but it's not us that would 180 on him. It's him that 180 on us. And there's obviously an agenda there. And in fact, I'll tell you what the agenda is. To me, it seems like he's trying to cozy up to some consulting gig with these institutions, and he needed to distance himself from us because we're too critical of him. But again, it ain't us that switched up. We've been the same thing we've been since John and Eric were on the show.
Oh yeah, and then he unleashed his days after putting all that garbage out about us. He unleashes his new website with his consulting firm where he does institutional consulting, because sometimes institutions need a haircut and not just a thing. Basically saying, please hire me, NYPD, please hire me, Zohar Mamdani. So I mean, it was it was obviously there was an agenda there the entire time. So
it's pretty interesting.
I don't feel bad about it.
To me, it's pretty interesting that all these characters are coming out with these subliminal job interviews, like Eric Sanders. To me, that it appears to be a subliminal job interview, and same thing for Ronnie Harrison. To me, it was like a subliminal job interview. They're all vying for positions right now. It's wide open right now. The Pandora's box is open. To me, it appears that they're trying to find their way. So, hey, listen, it's okay. I mean, I think we did far more for Eric Sanders than Eric Sanders ever did for us. There's no doubt about it. What do you do for us?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yeah. So Wednesday we'll have Hiram Monserrati on. So get your questions ready. And we'll he's running in he's going to be running for something. I'll let him announce it then. I don't know if he's announced it yet. So we'll go through that. Mike Kane just put out a great article on Eric Adams on his last FU to unvaccinated fire workers. It's called Mayor's Office Pulls Bait and Switch Release on Fire Workers. I gave him a quote. He published this. This is what I said. I said, Eric Adams arbitrarily enforced a vaccine mandate that forced countless New York City public servants, cops, teachers, firefighters, and other dedicated workers out of careers in city service while granting exemptions to friends, political allies, and celebrities. In the final days of his administration, he cruelly teased these workers with the hope of reinstatement, only to leave office without honoring that commitment. History will remember his administration as one marked by corruption, inconsistency, and a troubling disregard for the very working class New Yorkers he swore an oath before God to serve. The fact that this targeted tyranny occurred under a mayor who came from a working class New York City family and who at one time wore an NYPD uniform only deepens the sense of betrayal felt by the workers and families harmed by his decisions. So, and ultimately what I meant to say is Eric Adams is a phony fraud who holds the water for billionaires, but I just put it a little more eloquently there.
Yeah, eloquent. I like it. Very good.
All right, peoples. All right, so we're good.
I'll stay here. Thank everyone for the coffee and donuts. Like, share, and subscribe. 3 hours and 3 minutes into it. We appreciate it. John said we're going a little long today at 2 hours. I was like, what? I think we've been talking about doing this for 90 minutes. 2 hours has never happened. So I'm just preparing for the 3-hour show, 3-hour tour. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Thanks for the engagement. As always, Finest Unfiltered.
Absolutely, people. Join us up. Hit us back on Wednesday. We're going to have 10-4 Tavern coming up tomorrow night. Next show's coming up, all right? Make sure you check them out. What was the last thing? do us a favor. If you're watching after, please hit that hype button, hit the like button, and then hit the hype button below. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, it moves us up in the algorithm, helps us grow to get towards that 100,000 subscriber mark before we start to push for 1 million. So appreciate everybody for joining us today. Find us Unfiltered. We'll be back at you, peoples.
Be safe, guys.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?